Chapter 2153. It was just that with Huyin Ayanu's suppression, even he had to restrain his temper, but his heart was even more unhappy. Yi Shiwen was indeed very strong, but he was not bad either. Not to mention, in these 7 days he had also gained a lot. At this time, his self-confidence was bursting. The psychological shadow that Yi Shiwen had caused him a few days ago had long been forgotten. His words immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone had gained something and felt that a breakthrough was in front of them. They were full of confidence, but among these people, Yi Shiwen was the strongest. And when the conflict between the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad and Yi Shiwen broke out, they could also watch from the side and see how big the gap was now. The current gap did not mean that there would be such a gap for a lifetime. One day, they would be able to catch up. Yi Shiwen just glanced at the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad, then slowly said, "You are not my opponent. There is no need to try." What? Blue-eyed golden-eyed toad never dreamed that Yi Shiwen would actually say such words. Yi Shiwen simply did not put him in his eyes at all. He did not take him seriously at all. Yi Shiwen had always said such words to others. No one had ever said such words to him, not to mention that Yi Shiwen was only at the 6th level of Paoang realm, which was far worse than him. Arrogant and conceited, he squeezed out these words from his teeth, simply hating Yi Shiwen. "I'm just telling the truth," Yi Shiwen said lightly. "Ha! What a good telling the truth." The monkey laughed and said, "This blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was very ambitious. From the beginning, he wanted to group them together and then become the leader. He had long been displeased with him, and now that he saw him being defeated, he naturally clapped and applauded." The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad glared at him angrily. He was extremely unhappy, but he knew that this monkey was not simple either. He could not be enemies with two people at the same time. Although he was arrogant, he was not stupid. "Cut the crap. Do you dare to fight with me?" When the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad spoke, his eyes were fixed on Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's heart was very clear. How could he not know that this blue-eyed golden-eyed toad had not given up on his idea of becoming the leader of this group of people? In order to become a leader, the best way was to establish one's prestige and virtue, and he had obviously become the target of his prestige. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. If he really thought that he was a pushover, then he was gravely mistaken. "Since you want to humiliate yourself, then I will fulfill your wish," Yi Shiwen said. "Then come at me. Let me see how strong you really are." The blue-eyed golden toad was already furious. "Eat my palm first." The blue-eyed golden toad instantly attacked. He directly slapped the air with his palm, flattening the space and turning everything into nothingness. The power of this palm could be seen. He was determined to fight to the death, not giving Yi Shiwen any chance to breathe. If you only have these insignificant skills, then don't boast. Yi Shiwen snorted again and again. He was not a good-tempered person. This blue-eyed golden toad obviously did not come with good intentions, so he naturally would not give it a good look. He waved his big hand and turned it into a big golden hand that instantly absorbed the power of this palm. It was effortless, without the slightest bit of difficulty. Although his strength did not increase in the past 7 days, he had steadily stepped into the 9th heaven of the Paoang realm. This allowed him to control his strength to an astonishing degree. It was almost effortless for him to destroy all of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad's attacks. "You have some ability, but let's see what happens next." The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad bellowed, its aura surging to the sky. Behind it, countless poisonous gas surged up and spewed out like raging flames. He was like a god, controlling the surrounding space and comprehending the true meaning of the Great Way. He looked down at Yi Shiwen as if he could control the operation of the sun and moon. Everyone could not help but marvel in their hearts. Strong, very strong. Although this blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was arrogant and wanted to rule everyone, when it came to strength, it was indeed capable. Without exception, everyone had the same thought, unrivaled. With a casual move, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. With a wave of his hand, a poisonous gas filled the air. This was no longer poisonous gas, but the law of poison that destroyed everything. He spread out his 5 fingers and directly slapped down. There were countless laws of poison on each finger, representing different poisonous gas. There were hundreds of millions of law talismans condensed on it, and it had the power to destroy the heavens. It directly blocked all of Yi Shiwen's escape routes, leaving him nowhere to retreat and nowhere to escape. Yi Shiwen stood still and did not even look at it. He said, "I said, you are not my opponent. You don't believe me? Then I will let you see now how big the gap between you and me is. You were not my opponent in the first place, and now it is even more impossible for you to be my opponent." Whoosh! Yi Shiwen finally moved. Countless saber lights burst out from his body and directly swept into a long dragon. Countless saber laws manifested in it, and instantly slashed towards the palm full of poisonous gas. After he cultivated the World Breaker Blade, his saber cultivation had greatly improved. It was not the same as before. With a raise of his hand and a lift of his foot, he broke the palm completely. What a powerful saber technique! The blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad was shocked and quickly stretched out his hand. Just now, the saber light had faintly penetrated the miasma on his body, and he could feel the sharpness in his hand. If he had not retreated in time, he would have suffered a loss. He retreated again and again. The miasma barrier built around his body had already collapsed completely. It could not defend at all. It was destroyed by Yi Shiwen as soon as he came up, and he suffered a small loss. Yi Shiwen was merciless. He took a step forward and instantly rushed in front of the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad. A long saber condensed in his hand, and he slashed out suddenly. The saber aura swept out thousands of feet, directly piercing through the sky and earth, and fiercely slammed down on the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad. Yi Shiwen's countless saber auras interweaved and formed a long river that swept in all directions. It was invincible. As soon as he made his move, he vividly and thoroughly reflected his cultivation in Saber Dao during this period of time. He originally had an extremely strong foundation in Saber Dao. Although he did not condense into a Saber Dao incarnation, he was not far from it. With the completion of the first level of the World Breaker Blade, his understanding of Saber Dao had even more earth-shaking changes. In the face of Yi Shiwen's aggressiveness, the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad was completely enraged. He roared and said, "It turns out that you have some understanding of Saber Dao. No wonder you are so arrogant." He wasn't a benevolent person. He had been caught off guard by Yi Shiwen and had suffered a small loss. However, he was far from being at the end of the line. He roared, and his entire body faintly changed back to its original form. His entire body had turned dark green, and he looked like a monster. His eyes turned into turquoise pupils, and his golden pupils represented his understanding of Poison Dao. Boom! In his eyes, countless poisonous rays burst out. Compared to the poisonous gas that was casually released just now, it was not known how many times more tyrannical. This was his core power, and also his true strength. The strength of the peak of the 8th level of Paong Realm was finally fully released at this moment. The two sides collided fiercely in the void, forming a monstrous wave of air, sweeping out in circles. The blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad, who had burst out with all his strength, was like a demon god and did not want to let Yi Shiwen go. He took a step forward on the spot and chased after Yi Shiwen. "To be able to force me into this form, you're also amazing, but this is the end," the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad said proudly. Everyone retreated, very afraid of the poisonous gas of the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad. This blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad has actually cultivated to this level. This kind of poisonous gas, I am afraid it can really poison a world. Rumor has it that there is no place on the body of the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad that does not have poisonous gas. If you come into contact with it, you may be poisoned to death. In addition to his gains in the past 7 days, I am afraid it has reached an incredible level. Everyone was afraid of being contaminated by the poisonous gas and did not dare to approach it all. Even the sword-carrying youth and the monkey were no exception. Although they had their own ways to defend themselves, if it was not necessary, they did not want to be contaminated by such troublesome poisonous gas. "It's just this state. I want to see you return to your original form." Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all. When the poisonous gas touched Yi Shiwen's body, it could only make a continuous sizzling sound and could not penetrate the defense of Yi Shiwen's body. Everyone was extremely surprised. It was like this from the beginning. Yi Shiwen did not have any reaction to the strongest part of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad. He was not afraid at all. What kind of physique is this? Is there such a physique in the human race that is completely unafraid of poison? Or did he inherit some bloodline? Everyone was talking about it. The eyes of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad flashed slightly with an amazing killing intent. An invisible force from all directions condensed towards its body. At this moment, it was like a real god. Boundless poison techniques were released around its body, and countless poison Tao laws manifested. Around its body, a world of poison Tao was formed, and inside, there were countless poison Tao longevity worlds. Its power was getting stronger and stronger as the poisonous gas increased. For others, it was a fatal poisonous gas, but for him, it was a great tonic. His body also condensed a layer of miasma, protecting him in it. Boom! The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad attacked again, and this condensed, boundless poisonous gas directly turned into a shocking torrent on the spot and directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen. It seems that you really do not give up until you see the yellow river, and will not shed tears until you see the coffin. In that case, I will finish you one move. Chapter 2154. It seems that you really won't give up until you see the yellow river, and won't shed tears until you see the coffin. In that case, I will finish you off in one move. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and shouted. His voice swept out like a wave, setting off endless waves of air. In the face of the blue-eyed golden toad, who directly blasted out endless poisonous gas, Yi Shiwen immediately attacked. His feet stepped in all directions, and suddenly, his saber directly shattered everything, like a blade of lightning, tearing the sky apart. It was extremely terrifying. Watch carefully. I will defeat you in one move. Yi Shiwen shouted. An endless divinity condensed and then released. The light was bright, and a shocking saber aura directly condensed, turning into a shocking long saber, as if it could cut through the world and cut through the river of time. Everything, cut it all for me. In his saber aura, there was supreme power, as if it was a powerful force that could cut through the world. What kind of saber technique is this? The blue-eyed golden toad felt a shocking threat, and he wanted to retreat, but Yi Shiwen did not give him such a chance at all. His whole body was like an eagle, and his long saber was invincible. Under the crushing of that terrible saber aura, all the poisonous gas defense on his body exploded, shattering into countless pieces. How can there be such a powerful saber technique? He kept retreating, simply afraid. The pressure formed by that terrible saber aura seemed to be able to cut through everything. Compared to the previous saber technique, this saber technique was simply superior to any saber technique he had shown before. The blue-eyed golden toad opened its mouth and roared, spewing out endless poisonous gas. It slammed its palm down on Yi Shiwen, piercing through the entire void. The poisonous gas in its hand corroded the void. Boom! The two sides collided, and the saber aura and poisonous gas fiercely collided in the void, bursting out endless dazzling light, directly covering the color of the world. The poisonous gas and the saber aura constantly devoured each other, and Fairy, whose attack shattered the space in all directions. Boom! Yi Shiwen's saber aura was a notch higher, directly cutting through the poisonous gas that filled the sky, and then suddenly fell on the body of the blue-eyed golden toad. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body flew out on the spot. Although the saber chi had been weakened by the poisonous gas, the part that directly slashed on his body still severely injured him in an instant. He didn't even have time to react and couldn't resist at all. He went out and directly crashed into the pagoda. He barely managed to stop and tumbled down. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His entire face was abnormally ugly. Although he wasn't killed by Yi Shiwen on the spot, he was actually not far from it. He knew very well that if Yi Shiwen hadn't held back just now, he would have been killed in a normal battle outside. How could a proud and arrogant person like him accept this fact? However, it was an undeniable fact that he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen. Moreover, he had been defeated miserably by Yi Shiwen. Everyone was stunned by Yi Shiwen's blade. Even the blue-eyed golden toad ended up in such a state, so the others might not be able to survive either. Especially the young man with the sword on his back and the golden-haired monkey. Their expressions were even more serious. Yi Shiwen, I lost this time, but next time, I will definitely beat you, the blue-eyed golden toad said unwillingly. He didn't expect that in the past 7 days, he thought that he had made great progress. Who would have thought that the gap between him and Yi Shiwen was even wider? Originally, he thought that Yi Shiwen was definitely not his opponent, but the fact was that he was not his opponent. This fact was really too cruel. Let's talk about it next time. Yi Shiwen's attitude of not even looking at him made him feel like he was holding back his anger. He was so depressed that he wanted to spit out a few more mouthfuls of blood. For these people who had just arrived at Deification Abyss, this battle was just the beginning. Soon, after everyone came out, an old man broke the void and walked in. He glanced at the blue-eyed golden toad that had fallen to the ground and said, "Oh, from the looks of it, they had already exchanged blows? Not bad. After entering Deification Abyss, you can only fight, and fight." Everyone's expression became dignified. Seeing that the old man didn't blame them, they all breathed a sigh of relief. From Huyin Ayana's body, they could see that this Deification Abyss was really full of experts. Any random person who came out might not be a big shot. Before they had complete confidence, it was best to tuck their tails between their legs. Although they were not used to it, it was not impossible. One must know that they were not born so strong. It was just that as they slowly became stronger, they also became more arrogant and domineering, looking down on others. Blue-eyed golden toad? It's an ancient species. Unfortunately, it didn't fully release its potential, but it doesn't matter. You will be fine in Deification Abyss. How about it? Can you still leave? The old man glanced at the blue-eyed golden toad that had fallen to the ground and said, "I can't." The blue-eyed golden toad forcibly climbed up from the ground, then glanced at the old man and said, "All right, all of you come with me." The old man casually tore the void and immediately tore a huge crack in the void. It was a passage to the outside world. Then, under his lead, everyone went out one after another. However, contrary to what everyone had expected, after they exited, they did not arrive outside the Divine Transformation Tower. Instead, they arrived at a completely new place. It was an incomparably huge continent. The main road was filled with endless mountain peaks, and countless mountains rose from the ground. "May I ask, Senior, where is this place?" Yi Shiwen was the first to come out and asked. "This place will be your dojo from now on," the old man explained. "You will all live here in the future. This place has already been remodeled. Every mountain is a dojo, and there are formations set up inside. There are all kinds of resources that you will need for cultivation. In short, all you need to do is cultivate well and compete to be the strongest." Everyone was a little uncomfortable. After all, their dojo outside was easily a planet or a world. Such a small mountain made it difficult for them to adapt. "What? You're not happy? Do you think it's easy to set up a dojo here?" The old man said, "How many people beg for a dojo like this? Even Tao, confirming powerhouses don't have this opportunity." Everyone was stunned and gasped. Even Tao, confirming deities wanted to enter this place? So, in the future, you will know how difficult it is to have a dojo here. You are lucky to have caught up with this plan. Under normal circumstances, even Tao, confirming deities, can live here for a long time. The Deification Abyss not only means to transform into a deity, but also means that even deities can evolve. The old man said, "Once you are eliminated, you don't know how long it will take for you to come back. So, work hard." The old man said, "Once you are eliminated, you don't know how long it will take for you to come back. So work hard." In previous years, more than 90% of the people were eliminated, so I hope you will be better. However, you are newcomers, so you still have some preferential treatment. For the first 3 times, even if you are outside the top 1,000, you will not be expelled. However, after the 3rd time, if you can't squeeze into the top 1,000, you will be immediately eliminated. There is no other possibility. Everyone was silent. They had heard about this matter from Huyin Ayanu before. In other words, they would have 2 years before the 4th competition. They would be able to live here and cultivate. This was a terrifying elimination rate. Although it was very unfair to them, even if they had cultivated here for 2 years, how could they be compared to the seniors who had cultivated here for more than 10 years, more than 20 years, or even more than 100 years? However, there was no fairness in this plan. They didn't want mediocre people. They only wanted geniuses, geniuses among geniuses. Once their performance was not up to standard, they would inevitably be eliminated. If they were outstanding enough, they would naturally be able to catch up with those top geniuses. Dare I ask, senior, as long as I can squeeze into the top 1,000, can I cultivate here forever? Yishuan asked a question that was on everyone's mind. If they could cultivate here forever, then wouldn't they have endless possibilities to prove their Tao? This is naturally impossible. The resources here are not easy to obtain. We only want geniuses, top geniuses, so it is very simple. The maximum number of years you can cultivate here is only 100 years. Within 100 years, if you can prove your Tao, then you can go to the 2nd region. If you can't, then naturally, you will have to abdicate and give way. The old man said, 100 years. This number fiercely hit everyone's heart. A trifling 100 years might just be a snap of the fingers. It might just be the time of a nap, but they were asking to prove their Tao. If they couldn't, then they would be kicked out. What kind of plan was this? Were they choosing geniuses? Or monstrous geniuses? Monsters? Originally, in their own plans, it would be considered smooth if they could prove their Tao within a few thousand years. But now, this plan of thousands or even tens of thousands of years had to be compressed into a short 100 years. In 100 years, they would have to walk the path of thousands or tens of thousands of years. If they couldn't complete it, then they would be thrown out of the deity transformation abyss like garbage. They would become the most shameful loser in everyone's eyes. However, that is still too far away for you guys. Almost no one can guarantee that they will be able to stay here for 100 years. You newcomers should first pass the first round and not be eliminated. The old man said with a faint smile. Chapter 2155. Everyone immediately became gloomy. Yes, it was hard to say if they could succeed in the first round. The elimination rate of more than 90% in the past was like a sharp sword floating above their heads, ready to chop down at any time. Since such a rule has been set, it means that someone must be able to do it. There's no reason why others can do it, but I can't. I will definitely be able to do it. At first, Yishuan was also shocked by the requirement of achieving Tao validation in 100 years. Achieving Tao validation in 100 years? Such a requirement would probably scare people to death in the outside world. In the Xian world, even achieving Tao validation was a legend, not to mention achieving Tao validation in a mere 100 years. As expected of the forces behind the nameless Tao College. The only thing he was still worried about was that Jun Dingtian was also here. Why hadn't he seen him yet? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but step forward and say, "Senior, may I ask if you have already recruited a group of people?" The old man looked at Yishuan and said, "Well, that's right. We have indeed recruited a group of people. Now they are in the final stage, and it won't be long before they decide whether to stay or leave." "It's been so long, and I still don't know your name, senior?" Yishuan continued to ask. After going through a series of events, Yishuan had vaguely become the leader of everyone. This was unlike the previous plans of the blue-eyed golden toad. Even though everyone had their own plans, at this time, they were vaguely following Yishuan's lead. "My name? You can just call me Elder Kong." The old man shook his head and said. It seemed that he was unwilling to mention his name, as if there was something that was difficult to say. "The entire continent here is managed by me. In the future, if you encounter anything that you don't understand, you can come to Misty Peak to find me. But remember, you are only from the 3rd region. Remember not to cross the line to the 2nd region. Otherwise, I won't be able to save you even if you die. If I may be so bold to ask, how are the 3rd and 2nd regions divided?" How many regions are the entire continent divided into? Yishuan asked. Everyone had a look of anticipation on their faces. They also wanted to know. There were too many things in the deification abyss that they did not understand. The entire deity transformation abyss is divided into 3 areas. The third area is where cultivators under the Tao confirming realm gather. The second area is for those who have reached the Tao confirming realm. As for the first area, it's not something you need to know. In any case, most of you may not be able to see the first area in your lifetime. Elder Kong said mercilessly, not leaving the slightest bit of face for the crowd. However, no one was angry because perhaps this was the cruel reality. They might not even be able to go to the second region where the Tao confirming powerhouses resided, let alone the legendary first region. Elder Kong continued, the first region doesn't only consist of this continent. There are many nearby spaces and plains, all of which are considered to be subsidiary regions of the first region. These are places you can get close to. This rule is also for your own good. The second region is too dangerous. Who knows how many primordial fierce beasts there are? Even Tao, confirming experts, might not be able to protect themselves, let alone ants like you. Elder Kong, isn't it too frequent to call for Lilong once every 6 months? If the place is far away from the battle, wouldn't it be a waste of time to go there? At this time, Monkey finally couldn't bear it anymore and stepped forward. He also asked the question that many people were worried about. If the battle was far away, wouldn't it be a waste of time to go back and forth? Then they wouldn't need to cultivate in the future. They would only need to run back and forth. In order to avoid affecting your cultivation, your battle will not be in the real world. Instead, it will be carried out in the Void Realm. During the battle, you will enter the Void Realm with your primordial spirit and reconstruct your body inside. It will be the same as your physical body in the real world. Therefore, you don't need to worry about this problem. As long as your thoughts are there, you can enter the Void Realm at any time and place. Elder Kong looked at Monkey with admiration. He seemed to appreciate the fact that Monkey was able to grasp the crux of the problem so quickly. Being able to display 100% of one's strength in a pure spiritual world was a very powerful method. In any case, they had never seen or heard of such a method. Does that mean that as long as a wisp of primordial spirit incarnation can participate in the battle, and it won't affect the cultivation of the main body? Yishuan suddenly came to a realization. This was similar to the mode that he had heard about in the Nameless Tao Institute. However, it was much more advanced than that because he could perceive the situation inside the Void Realm at any time. Elder Kong nodded. Everyone's face revealed a hint of joy. Finally, the most troublesome problem was solved. It seemed that this deity abyss had prepared everything for them. All they needed to do was to cultivate and then continue to fight and defeat stronger opponents. If they couldn't even do this well, then they wouldn't have the face to see their elders. At the same time, let me warn you, although it's the third district, it's not peaceful. Here, everything is determined by strength. Once you leave the 2-year rookie protection period, if you want to survive here, it will all depend on strength. We won't interfere with your internal competition, Elder Kong said. In Yi Shiwen's mind, a sentence appeared again. The strong will always be strong, and the weak will always be weak. The strong can be unscrupulous, and the weak can only live with their tails between their legs. This was probably what they meant. All right, that's all for now. Go back to your respective dojos and rest. 2 years is very precious, so make the most of it. If you have any questions, you can ask my doppelgangers. They exist in every dojo, so if there's anything you don't know, you can ask them. After Elder Kong finished speaking, before everyone could even react, they saw him make a technique. Almost all of them were involuntarily turned into a ball of light and were thrown into different dojos. Looking at the disappearing figures, Elder Kong smiled and said, "This time, the quality of the newcomers is not bad. I hope that there will be a few good seedlings. Time waits for no man." Yi Shiwen's vision turned black, and when he reappeared, he was already at the entrance of a cave. He saw that the entire cave was surrounded by endless arrays, and as soon as he stepped inside, these countless arrays automatically operated and opened a path for him. And in the depths of the arrays, Yi Shiwen saw Elder Kong again. He suddenly understood that this wasn't the Elder Kong, but a wisp of his soul incarnation. But even so, he still gave an unfathomable feeling. Although it wasn't as good as the Elder Kong's, it was still very amazing. The Elder Kong has already informed me about your matter. If there is anything you don't understand in the future, feel free to look for me. I can be considered as the butler of this dojo. Elder Kong said with a smile. Compared to the Elder Kong, his smile was much gentler. Thank you, Elder Kong. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said, You don't need to thank me. I'm not the Elder Kong, and I'm just a wisp of soul incarnation. It doesn't matter to me at all. Elder Kong said with a smile. For the next 2 years, you'll have to cultivate here. As for whether you can stay or not, that's up to you. There are resources for your cultivation in the cave abode. Apart from setting up the formation, there's also a piece of divine source as your resource. Every 2 years, you can reclaim a new piece. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but be secretly speechless when he heard this. They were actually using the divine source as the cultivation resources for the newcomers. The word wealthy couldn't be used to describe it. He had only obtained 36 divine source when he had excavated the divine tomb. Moreover, it would require dozens of divine source just for the dozens of people this time. Not to mention that there were thousands of people cultivating here. The consumption would simply be an astronomical figure if they were to be allocated according to this. It was a wealth that he couldn't imagine. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a happy expression. He didn't lack divine source, but who wouldn't want benefits that were delivered to him? No wonder this place dared to boast that a mere 100 years could help a person become a god. Yi Shiwen indeed had the confidence and strength to prove his Tao within 100 years. However, 100 years might be enough for others. But it was far from enough for Yi Shiwen because he didn't have that much time. Even a mere 100 years was too long for him. There is also a token for you to go to the void. Only with this token can you connect your divine sense to the void. Do you understand? Elder Kong continued. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded. But can't I connect my divine sense to the void? Do I have to wait until there's a competition? Elder Kong said in a matter-of-fact manner. Of course not. The void is virtual, but everything is no different from the real world. You can also choose to go to the void on normal days. You can have everything you need inside the void. Yi Shiwen was secretly speechless. This was something that could only be done with great power. At the very least, he couldn't guess it at the moment. Dare I ask, Elder Kong, what should I do if I want to earn points? Yi Shiwen asked. By winning battles, you can earn a lot of points with each battle. In addition, you can complete some missions issued by the deity Transformation Abyss. When you complete them, you can also earn points. As long as you distribute them well, it is very easy to earn a lot of points in a short period of time. Elder Kong said. Yi Shiwen understood. The newcomers inside, listen up. Come out. Chapter 2156. The newcomers inside, listen up. Come out. Suddenly, a loud voice came from outside. Yi Shiwen hurriedly rushed out of the cave residence. At this time, not only Yi Shiwen, but many of the newcomers who came with Yi Shiwen had also appeared, looking at the sky. In the sky, a tall figure was flying in the sky. It was a young man with an evil smile on his face. He looked arrogant, looking at the many newcomers with a bit of disdain on his face, as if he saw his appearance in the past. However, there was not the slightest sympathy on his face. On the contrary, there was a bit of ridicule on his face. Who are you? Someone asked loudly. Yao Xingyan. Remember this name. You should have entered your own dojo. The next thing is very simple. Hand over your divine source, said the young man with an evil smile. Hand over divine source? Why? Everyone suddenly burst into an uproar. This young man actually wanted them to hand over the divine source. It was as if he wanted their lives. Not everyone was as rich as Yi Shiwen, who had dozens of divine source. If one of them had a piece of divine source, then it would be considered a great fortune. Asking them to hand over divine source at this time was like asking for their lives. Moreover, although they could receive another divine source in 2 years, they might not be able to stay in the deification abyss after 2 years. The elimination rate was as high as 90%. which was enough to make everyone fearful. They were already lacking in confidence. Furthermore, if even their god source was snatched away, even in such a unique environment, it would be difficult to guarantee that they would be able to make it to the top 1,000. One must know that these were not ordinary people. Each of them was a genius among the peerless geniuses who had gone through layers of selection. Because you won't be able to use it anyway. It's enough if there are 3 to 5 of you left. Why waste resources? Said Yao Xingyin with a smile. He directly opened a big cannon, completely ignoring everyone. Everyone was suddenly infuriated by his words. Although the final result was likely to be as he said, looking down on others like this was simply poking a hornet's nest. I think you should not be too arrogant. An expert whose entire body was covered in green scales finally couldn't take it anymore. With a loud shout, he charged forward. However, before his attack could be fully unleashed, it was broken by Yao Xingyin's finger. What kind of trash is this? How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? Yao Xingyin sneered and slapped him. The newcomer expert was directly hit. His entire body was like a meteor that crashed into the ground, causing the entire ground to shake. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. This new master was at least at the 7th heaven of Paoang realm, but he was defeated so easily that he couldn't even fight back. The bottom line of this fellow's strength was simply unfathomable. First, there was Huyan Ayanu. Now, there was Yao Xingyin. He was so strong that he was abnormally tyrannical. Everyone was in despair. If their opponents were all so abnormally strong, then how would they be able to kill their way to the top 1,000? How powerful would the top 100 or even the top 10 be? Isn't that Yao Xingyin? Is he bullying the newcomers again? One look, and you can tell. TSK, these newcomers are going to be in big trouble. It is said that his cultivation has reached the most critical stage. As long as he has a little opportunity, he can step into the 9th heaven of Paoang realm in one fell swoop. At that time, his status will be turned upside down. Well, yes, I heard that he is now snatching divine source everywhere. He's really lawless. So what if he's lawless? Who asked him to have such a good brother? He is a powerful existence in the top 10. As the saying goes, even if it is not for the monk's sake, it is for the Buddha's sake. Who dares to provoke Yao Xingqing? We can only blame these newcomers for not being strong enough. Didn't they say that this batch is relatively tyrannical? It should be said that the quality of these few batches is not bad. It seems that it is just a rumor. They are not Yao Xingyin's opponent at all. There was a lot of discussion around them. These old people who lived here did not have the slightest fear and directly said it out loud. When it fell into the ears of many newcomers, their faces turned extremely ugly. At this time, everyone understood that in the deification abyss, it was really difficult to survive. It was not a world where they could dominate in the past at all. Although the previous proposal of the blue-eyed golden toad was somewhat selfish, it was not necessarily without reason. If this world was too dangerous, they could only huddle together for warmth. This might be better. You'd better be obedient. What I hate the most is people wasting my time. Otherwise, don't even think about coming out in the future. You won't be able to survive the 2 years of the newcomer period. Yao Xingyin said with a sneer, unless you don't plan to come out. So, what if you are strong? Aren't you afraid of incurring public anger by doing this? Someone shouted unwillingly. Yao Xingyin sneered disdainfully. Incurring public anger? It's just a group of ants. Do you think I care? Ants? What an ant? Since you're so capable, then eat this old sun stick first. Suddenly, a golden light soared into the sky, and an iron stick expanded in the void against the wind. It grew bigger and bigger, directly smashing down on Yao Xingyin. It was Monkey who made a move. As soon as he made a move, he had the strength to move mountains and rivers. Although he looked a little thin, his strength was top-notch. Clang! Monkey's iron stick was directly caught by Yao Xingyin in the air. The collision between the two sides directly made a loud sound of gold and iron colliding, bursting out countless sparks. Thump, thump, thump. The monkey took a few steps back. His expression turned serious, and he was no longer as relaxed as before. If one looked closely, They could see that his arm was actually trembling slightly. His palm had split open, and fresh blood flowed down the metal rod. His eyes were a bit blood-red, and his bestial nature climbed to his brain as he constantly growled in a low voice. As for Yao Xingyin, with just a slight shake, the numbness in his body disappeared. "You're not bad. Quite interesting. You're much stronger than that trash from before, but not bad. Are you interested in being my servant?" Yao Xingyin said with a chuckle, his eyes filled with a sinister charm. The rookies were completely shocked. Although they couldn't say that they knew Monkey's strength very well, they understood it very well. It was not something the average person could deal with. In this exchange, he had suffered a loss. Monkey, who was wielding a weapon, had been sent flying, and even his palm had shattered. Although it was only a flesh wound and not a big deal, it was enough to completely shock them. This Yao Xingyin is bullying again. This Yao Xingyin is bullying people again. He's bullying a newcomer who doesn't even know his roots. His original form is a Herculean King Kong beast. He was born with the power of dragons and elephants, and his body is like a diamond cast. He doesn't need any celestial artifacts at all, because his race has cultivated their bodies into celestial artifacts, making them incomparably tyrannical. This is a body cultivation method that is said to be comparable to Emperor Qin's famous lost art, the secret art of 9-9. Who didn't have rookies? They had experienced the same rookie period, so they naturally hoped to see their juniors do the same. The suffering they had suffered back then was not in vain. "You have great strength. I never expected that there would be someone in this world with greater strength than me, old son," Monkey said with a chuckle. He was naturally referring to those in the same realm. In terms of physical strength, his clan was not inferior at all, and they were renowned throughout the universe. However, when it came to a complete competition of physical strength, they were at a disadvantage. Of course, he was also clear that the root of the reason was that his cultivation was far inferior to Yao Xingyin's. To ordinary people, his skills were already unimaginably deep. He was only one step away from stepping into the 9th level of the Paong realm and reaching the peak of the mythical realm. It was also because of this that he understood how terrifying Yao Xingyin was. There was actually someone who could have such profound skills. One's skills were like water, and one's realm was like the water jar. If the water jar was not big enough, no matter how much water you filled it with, it would only overflow. What he was really interested in was Yao Xingyin's understanding of martial arts. He was afraid that Yao Xingyin had already reached the peak and reached an unimaginably powerful level. "Three Eyes, you're from the Three-Eyed Heavenly Monkey Clan." TSK. There aren't many monkeys from this clan. It's rare to see one walking outside. I'm getting more and more interested. I wouldn't be interested in ordinary people, but you're different. If you're willing to join me, I'll definitely treat you well. It won't be long before you even have a chance to prove your way," Yao Xingyin said calmly, but there was a hint of greed in his eyes. The way everyone looked at Monkey changed. They hadn't expected him to be from the Three-Eyed Heavenly Monkey Clan. This clan was also a clan with innate magical powers. They were born with 3 eyes, and their third eye could see yin and yang, as well as communicate with the heavens and the earth. Throughout the generations, they had produced many experts. They were known as the experts of every generation, and their inheritance had never been severed. However, monkeys from this clan rarely appeared. In fact, there might not even be one in tens of thousands of years. Therefore, although some people had suspected it before, more people quickly eliminated this possibility. They hadn't expected it to be true. "Submit to you? You?" Monkey laughed coldly. His hands were no longer trembling. He had suppressed the aftermath of Peng Zuhong's attack just now. "The person who can subdue me hasn't been born yet. That's because you haven't met me yet." Yao Xingyin seemed very confident. Monkey didn't attack rashly. The attack just now had already made him suffer. Everyone knew the principle of learning from one's mistakes. Chapter 21:57. Everyone could see that Monkey was at a disadvantage, and he was at a slight disadvantage. The disadvantage was that his skill was not as profound as Yao Xingyin's, and there was not much difference between them. At this time, he was at a slight disadvantage. Many people were even more shocked. They originally thought that Monkey and the others should be at the limit of the 8th level of the Palong realm. The gap between them and Monkey and the others was mainly the gap in the realm. As long as they also stepped into the 8th level of the Palong realm, they would naturally be able to reach such a level. So even if their strength was temporarily inferior, they did not have the slightest psychological weakness when facing Monkey and the others. As for Yi Shiwen, he was a monster and was no longer within the scope of their consideration. However, Yao Xingyan made them suddenly realize that one could not possess similar combat power just because they had reached the same realm. They thought that Monkey was already at the peak of what mortals could achieve, but Yao Xingyan was even stronger than Monkey. It was unbelievable, but this was the god transformation abyss. All kinds of abnormal monsters had become normal here. Even they had to admit this. Some of them might be able to transform into a god in the future, but definitely not now. Monkey's expression was also constantly changing, and he was extremely fearful. It seemed that no one could suppress this arrogant Yao Xingyan in front of him. No, there was still one person. A name suddenly emerged in everyone's mind, and that person was Yi Shiwen. If it were for the previous 2 consecutive battles, everyone might not have so clearly felt the gap between them, especially the guy who was at the 6th level of the Palong realm, but beat the blue-eyed golden toad, who was at the 8th level of the Palong realm, to death. Thinking of this, almost at the same time, everyone turned their eyes to Yi Shiwen. He naturally felt that everyone's eyes had turned to him, hoping that he could come forward to stop the domineering Yao Xingyan. Yao Xingyan naturally noticed it too. His gaze finally shifted from the monkey to Yi Shiwen. It was a little strange. These people had high hopes for a human at the 6th level of Palong realm. Could it be that there was something strange about this human boy? Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said, "Go back. It's not too late to go back now, if you don't want to die." Yao Xingyan's eyelids twitched, and his expression changed. He laughed out loud and said, "This is the first time I've met someone more arrogant than me." "Ha, interesting. Human, you dare to tell me to retreat? Who do you think you are? Let me dig out your heart and see if it has become a dog's guts. How dare you clamor in front of me?" He didn't react at first, but when he did, all that was left was boundless anger. As he said this, he glared at Yi Shiwen, and then slapped his palm directly towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't give in at all. Ever since he had successfully practiced the Broken World Blade, his cultivation had steadily entered the 9th level of the Palong realm. The monkey and the others were originally a threat to him, but now they weren't a threat at all. He also wanted to have a good fight with a worthy opponent. He didn't give in at all. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. He confronted Yao Xingyan with equal harshness, not giving in at all. Bang! With a loud roar, the fist and palm of the 2 sides collided. It was like 2 huge iron blocks colliding together. At this time, the collision produced an earth-shattering sound. Yi Shiwen took a few steps back slightly. His strength was slightly inferior. He hadn't integrated with the martial arts incarnation and put on the 5 Emperor's battle armor. His combat power wasn't at the peak, but he felt that it was enough. Yao Xingyan's body swayed slightly and stabilized, but his face immediately showed a somewhat surprised expression. In this round of collision, it seemed that he had the upper hand, but in fact, it couldn't be seen as such. He was a dignified 8th level of the Palong realm, but he couldn't even deal with the 6th level of the Palong realm. After a slap, Yi Shiwen only took a few steps back and was fine. Even the monkey, who was in the same realm as him just now, had his perlicue ruptured. Blood flowed, and he suffered a little. How tyrannical was Yi Shiwen's physical body to be to such an extent? Not only him, but the old people who were waiting to watch a good show also looked at Yi Shiwen with their mouths agape. They originally thought that the newcomers had lost their minds. They actually pinned all their hopes on a human with the lowest realm. From the looks of it, it wasn't that they had lost their minds. Instead, it was that this human had some tricks up his sleeves. Although they didn't know exactly how strong he was, it was obvious that he was stronger than the monkey. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been seen as a savior by everyone. Herculean King Kong. TSK, you really have some strength? Yi Shiwen squinted his eyes. Since you don't want to leave, then don't blame me. I don't care what brother or godfather you have. If you want the God source in my hands, then let's see if you have the ability to do so. Yao Xinyan's face turned ugly. Yi Shiwen's words clearly meant that he was just a playboy who relied on his brother's name to run amok. Although Yi Shiwen was basically right, he could run amok to a large extent because those who could beat him would also give face to his brother and not casually attack him. He also wouldn't bully those he couldn't beat. Every time, he would choose the weaklings. In addition, his own strength was indeed tyrannical. Those weaklings couldn't even match his strength, let alone those who could match up to his brother. Therefore, it resulted in his fierce reputation. Good. Just based on these words of yours, even if I have to risk being punished, I will beat you to death in public. Yao Xingyan was completely infuriated by Yi Shiwen. His eyes were full of murderous intent. Herculean King Kong palm. He roared and struck out with his palm. It turned into a huge golden palm. It was completely golden, and the entire world seemed to be submerged in it. In this golden kingdom, even the void space collapsed, bringing with it a series of violent waves of the world. This palm directly slammed down on Yi Shiwen. He no longer held back. This time, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to be careless. The devil's wings behind him spread open and transformed into boundless devil energy that spread out. It collided with the boundless golden tide that was surging over. At the same time, his body directly integrated with the Fist Dao incarnation, making him instantly grow taller. He was like a supreme Fist Dao sage, walking between heaven and earth, turning the world into a world of Fist Dao. Eat my fist. Human Dao fist. He directly blasted out his fist. That terrifying power didn't turn into a human Dao city, but directly turned into the surging mortal world, and then collided with the Herculean King Kong palm. Rumble! Boundless chi waves surged out directly, with the point of collision between the two as the center, sweeping out in all directions. It was like circles upon circles of earth-shattering waves, shaking everything away. This time, Yi Shiwen didn't retreat again. Both sides were actually evenly matched. Everyone was completely shocked. Those old people couldn't believe that Yi Shiwen could actually contend with Yao Xingyan. Among those in the same realm, there were only a few who could do it, not to mention that he was 2 realms lower. It was simply abnormal, and in the eyes of those newcomers, there was a burst of surprise and doubt. This was also the first time they really saw Yi Shiwen's amazing 6 paths of reincarnation fist. When Yi Shiwen first attacked, he had already displayed amazing cultivation in Blade Dao. The world-shattering blade directly beat the blue-eyed golden toad to the point where it couldn't fight back, establishing his current supreme prestige among the newcomers. But they never knew that his Fist Dao also had such amazing cultivation, to the point of condensing a Fist Dao incarnation. They didn't know how many trump cards he still had. These people were all heroes of their generation, secretly working hard with Yi Shiwen as their goal. Now they realized that it seemed that after 7 days of comprehension, the gap between them and Yi Shiwen didn't shrink. On the contrary, it had widened. In particular, the blue-eyed golden toad was even more unwilling. When Yi Shiwen defeated him previously, he didn't even merge with the Fist Dao incarnation. In other words, Yi Shiwen clearly didn't take him seriously, and he couldn't even make him use his full strength. He clenched his fists and stared at the 2 people in the void. Not bad, take another punch from me. Yi Shiwen didn't have any other moves, but simply blasted out a human Dao fist directly. Even if Yao Xingyan wanted to say something, Yi Shiwen didn't give him such a chance at all, so he could only use the Herculean King Kong palm to clash with Yi Shiwen. Boom! 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 Both sides were like 2 barbarians fighting, only relying on their powerful strength to resist, neither side giving way at all. Yao Xingyan's Herculean King Kong palm is a god-level technique inherited from his bloodline. What kind of fist technique is this Yi Shiwen using? It's not bad at all. Is there such a fist technique among the hundreds of inheritances in the transforming God Tower? Someone couldn't help but exclaim, completely shocked. That's not the inheritance of the transforming God Tower. It's his own inheritance. I recognize that martial art. It's one of the supreme inheritances of the demon race, the human Dao fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. A knowledgeable lord immediately recognized the origin of this human Tao fist. The Six Paths of Reincarnation fist was really too famous. Along with the Azura Demon King sweeping across the world, this set of fist techniques also became famous. In the past, even if someone obtained a fragment of the inheritance, it was enough to sweep across the world and become invincible. Of course, no one would really think that Yi Shiwen really had the complete version of the inheritance. After all, it was an emperor-level martial art, but even if it was just the inheritance of the human Tao fist, it was enough to be amazing. I've also figured out your strength, so I'll defeat you, Yi Shiwen shouted, and the surrounding 5 elements qi condensed. Chapter 2158. Around Yi Shiwen, countless energies of the 5 elements began to condense, and in an instant, all of them gathered on his body. 5 Emperor's battle suit. Boom! His aura suddenly expanded in an instant. In this state, the 5 elements battle suit instantly raised his combat power to a new level. Around him, the power of the 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, faintly condensed into 5 incomparably powerful Emperor Lords. The 5 elements Emperor Lords directly guarded him in the middle, making him invincible. His body was surrounded by layers upon layers of the power of the 5 elements. Inside his body, countless Xian cores were burning rapidly. Just by condensing the power of the 5 elements, hundreds of millions of Xian cores were instantly burned, and the number of Xian cores was breaking through 10,000 per second. He was burning at an astonishing speed. This was destined to not be a normal state, but it was also the absolute combat power that he could unleash. With the support of the Xian cores, he could now do things that he could not do previously. Yao Xingyan's pupils suddenly shrank. Yi Shiwen's combat power had actually increased by a level out of thin air, instantly surpassing him. Damn it, see if I don't interrupt you. Yao Xingyan suddenly panicked. Facing Yi Shiwen, who was directly rushing over, he directly slapped down with his palm. This was a kind of divine palm that could destroy heaven and earth. Wherever it passed, the void collapsed violently. There was no way to support it at all. His palm came over, and on the golden palm power, a golden tide, all of which were condensed with countless law talismans. If an ordinary 8th level of Paong realm was hit by this attack, they would be severely injured in an instant. The sound of his palm breaking through the air carried a kind of unimaginable rhythm. This sound could also hurt people. The most important thing was that it was powerful and heavy. The essence of the mighty King Kong palm was to use this boundless power to sweep and crush any opponent. He had always been successful in every endeavor, but unfortunately, this time he encountered a monster and a pervert like Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen could not be calculated according to common sense at all. The strength of his gilded tyrant form was even more shocking. Boom! The mighty King Kong's palm directly slammed down. Yi Shiwen didn't block it. It was as if he hadn't reacted at all. Yao Xingyan's face revealed a somewhat triumphant grin. However, he hadn't fully reacted yet. He saw that his Herculean King Kong palm had directly blasted into the area in front of Yi Shiwen. However, he was unable to blast any further than 10 feet in front of Yi Shiwen. An invisible 5 elements great array that was protecting Yi Shiwen instantly manifested. At the edge of the 5 elements grand formation were the 5 5-star Earths casting spells. Their blurry figures gave off Supreme Emperor's might as they swept out in all directions. Impossible! Yao Xingyan couldn't believe it. His all-out palm strike was actually blocked so easily. Yi Shiwen didn't even move a little. His big hand sank deeper and deeper, and even gradually disappeared into the void. However, he knew that it didn't reach Yi Shiwen at all. Instead, it directly entered into the different space. In other words, all the power of his palm was directly discharged into the different space. However, there was no way to hurt Yi Shiwen at all. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes. In order to block this palm strike, he had used up tens of millions of Xian pills under the state of the 5 Emperor's battle armor. It could not be said to be cheap, but the effect was outstanding. Facing the attack of a master at the 8th level of the Paong realm, he could withstand it unscathed. Whoosh! Suddenly, countless golden divinities emerged from Yi Shiwen's body and formed a frenzied tide that rushed out in all directions. This time, I'll finish you off with one punch. Yi Shiwen's fist was wrapped in countless divinities. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched out. Human Dao Fist. Although it was still a simple human Dao fist, this fist technique contained countless laws and all kinds of changes. It was impossible to calculate. Even Yi Shiwen had not fully grasped it. Therefore, although he blasted out the human Dao fist every time, there were still differences. In fact, there were even significant differences. However, every time he blasted out the human Dao fist, he could gain new insights, and every time he blasted out the human Dao fist, it would be stronger. This was the fundamental reason why he was constantly getting stronger. Even in battle, he could absorb insights at any time and anywhere, and then transform them into stronger power. Damn it, bastard! Yao Xingyin kept retreating. Countless cracks appeared on the mighty King Kong palm that he blasted out. It was as if it was peeling off and completely shattered. Then, it turned into a mass of light and scattered in all directions. His move, the move that he was most proud of, was instantly broken by Yi Shiwen. However, the fist energy of Yi Shiwen's human Dao fist was just the beginning. Then a punch directly blasted out and directly blasted into Yao Xingyin's chest. Yao Xingyin knew that he had probably encountered an iron plate this time. However, he could not even retreat in time and was directly blasted. Bang! His entire body was blasted out on the spot like a kite with a broken string. A big hole instantly appeared in his chest, dripping with blood. It was even directly penetrated by Yi Shiwen. The physical body that he was so proud of was nothing in the face of Yi Shiwen's human Dao fist. In fact, he could not even heal his wounds. He was still being burnt by the power of the human Dao fist at any time and place. Didn't you look down on us? Didn't you think that you are great? It turns out that you are only at this level. I still overestimated you. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. There was a bit of disdain in his eyes. He looked down on this kind of existence that bullied the weak and feared the strong the most. Yao Xingyin was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood again. He had been arrogant all his life. Although it was partly because of his brother, wasn't he also a peerless genius himself? He had an invincible disposition, and there was hope for him to prove his Dao in the future. He had never suffered such a big loss before, not to mention being looked down upon like this. Damn human, I will definitely kill you. After killing you, I will raze your entire clan to the ground. I will also destroy the world that gave birth to you. Just wait for your death. Yao Xingyin seemed to have gone crazy. He had been forced onto the path of madness by Yi Shiwen. His eyes stared at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly opened when he heard this. He could see that this Yao Xingyin was definitely a person who would do what he said. Since he had said so, he would most likely do so in the end. Just because of this sentence, you must die. You have completely infuriated me. Yi Shiwen's eyes were cold, and there was a murderous intent in his eyes. Ha ha! Just because of you. Yao Xingyin laughed out loud. The injuries all over his body actually began to heal. A huge figure directly integrated into his body. It was his martial arts incarnation. At this time, it had completely integrated into his body. At this critical moment, he was finally going to integrate his martial arts incarnation. He had been forced to this point by Yi Shiwen, and there was no other choice. Rumble. After integrating with the martial arts incarnation, his strength had increased by a level. It was no longer the same as before. His eyes were crazy, and he had long lost the slightest bit of rationality. He had never suffered such a big loss before. The only thought in his mind now was to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces. He absolutely could not let Yi Shiwen live. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen might become his own inner demon. The more powerful a person was, the more they could not accept such a failure. Everyone understood this principle, but not everyone could truly face it calmly. And those who could truly face failure calmly would often have extraordinary achievements in the future. Die! A huge hand suddenly materialized and expanded against the wind. It fell like a cloud in the sky, covering the entire sky. It directly slammed down like a group of golden clouds. Human Dao Fist. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly and directly blasted out a punch. This punch was earth-shattering, and it broke through the sky and fiercely collided with that big hand. Boom! The shocking collision caused the void to shatter into endless chaos. The whole scene looked extremely terrifying. The confrontation between the two could be said to be the strongest under the mythical peak. Countless people around were stunned. What kind of level of battle was this? It had completely exceeded their initial expectations. Was this a battle that people at their level could carry out? Oh no! Yi Shiwen is in trouble now. The monkey narrowed his eyes and could not help but say. Yi Shiwen, who had integrated with the martial arts incarnation, was unparalleled. However, Yao Xingyan had condensed the martial arts incarnation and instantly turned the tables. The strength of both sides had once again declined. In the same realm, Yi Shiwen should be far stronger than Yao Xingyan. However, the problem was that they were not in the same realm now. This was the most crucial point. Haha, go to hell. Yao Xingyan had already gone completely crazy. He did not care about the consumption of martial power at all. He slammed his palm down again and again. Even Yi Shiwen, who was under the protection of the five elements major formation, was showing signs of not being able to hold on. He was faintly about to be defeated. He is really going to lose? However, he is able to force Yao Xingyan to this point with his identity of the sixth heaven of Paoang realm. I'm afraid that no one has ever done this before. TSK, a peerless genius of a generation. It's a pity that he is going to die here. He has completely forced Yao Xingyan to a dead end. If he is not killed, how will Yao Xingyan live in the future? I'm afraid that Yao Xingyan would rather be punished than to kill him. No, look, that Yi Shiwen has not given up yet. Everyone quickly looked over and saw that under Yao Xingyan's attack, Yi Shiwen, who seemed to be only able to defend, was also on the verge of exploding. In his body, countless sword auras gushed out from his pores, instantly condensing into the sword incarnation. Then, this sword incarnation directly rushed into his body. Boom! Waves of air swept out and swept towards the boundless primal chaos. Chapter 2159. Die! Yao Xingyan, who had yet to realize what was happening, felt a little uneasy in his heart. He decided to strike first. No matter what kind of strength he could still unleash, the premise was that he could unleash it. His palm directly slammed down, becoming bigger and bigger. He concentrated all the power in his body, wanting to dominate the universe with one palm. He was no longer satisfied with the slow speed from before. Bang! Suddenly, he sensed that his palm had been blocked by an even more powerful force. Boom! Then there was another huge roar, and the big hand that he had materialized was crushed on the spot. Ah! He screamed and retreated again and again. His entire arm was about to be grabbed by Yi Shiwen into a bloody mist. If he had retreated a little later, he would have been grabbed to death by Yi Shiwen on the spot. However, although his arm was not crushed, it was not far from it. The bones of his entire arm had been completely broken. A look of horror flashed in his eyes. In front of him, Yi Shiwen stood steadily in the sky. Golden divinities were constantly appearing under his feet, and he was as powerful as a god in the world. His eyes were cold, and his body constantly spewed out powerful waves. The powerful strength that gushed out from his pores made people feel terrified just by looking at him. This is the second martial arts incarnation. Everyone was shocked. There were many people present who had condensed their first martial arts incarnation. After all, those who could gather here were peerless geniuses among peerless geniuses. However, only a few of them could condense a second martial arts incarnation. It was already very difficult to condense the first martial arts incarnation, let alone the second. It was simply not something that ordinary people could do. Now that they had finally seen one, how could they not be shocked, especially Monkey and the others? They were finally convinced that there was indeed a world of difference between them and Yi Shiwen. In particular, the blue-eyed golden toad had always been unwilling. He had not had the time to use his strongest strength, and he had not even condensed a martial arts incarnation before he was defeated. He felt extremely wronged. However, it seemed that even if he condensed a martial arts incarnation, he would only end up being crushed. He might not even be able to withstand the first martial path incarnation, let alone force him to use the second martial path incarnation. You can actually, Yao Xingyin couldn't believe it. No wonder he couldn't do anything to him, no matter what. He had actually condensed a second martial arts incarnation. This level of strength was simply earth-shattering. Although he had a similar technique to condense a second clone, he had yet to succeed. One could imagine how difficult it was to do so. The condensation of martial arts incarnation was not necessarily related to one's strength. Many experts who had reached the Tao realm could not even condense a few martial arts incarnations. This was related to opportunities, talents, and many other aspects. Strength was naturally one of them, but it was not the only aspect that determined victory or defeat. To be able to force me to this point, you're pretty good, Yi Shiwen said. He seemed to be praising her, but his face didn't have the slightest look of praise. On the contrary, there was a somewhat sinister look on his face. All right, the game ends here. Whoosh! At that moment, Yi Shiwen made his move. He didn't even use any martial arts. He merely threw a slap. Bang! Everything had reached a climax. Yao Xingyin didn't even have time to react. He was directly slapped. Just when he was about to be slapped away by the force, he found that he was unknowingly fixed in place by a force. He could only take this monstrous force head-on. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen had already thrown thousands of slaps, directly slapping Yao Xingyin into a pig's head. Bang! Finally, he was sent flying by a slap. His physical body, which was said to be incomparably strong, was almost smashed into pieces. In the face of absolute power, Yao Xingyin had no ability to fight back. After condensing the second martial arts incarnation, Yi Shiwen's strength was not as simple as just doubling compared to before. Everything had started too quickly and ended too quickly. Just like how no one had expected that Yi Shiwen had actually concealed such strength. No one had expected that the real battle would end so quickly after it had broken out. Yao Xingyin's martial arts incarnation had been pulled out by Yi Shiwen at some point in time. This enormous energy also contained his understanding of martial arts. Yi Shiwen swallowed it all in front of everyone. One had to know that the martial Tao embodiment was something that could only be condensed when a cultivator had an extremely deep understanding of a certain martial Tao. It was almost all the essence of a warrior's understanding, and Yi Shiwen swallowed all of it. Boom! Countless energies were scouring Yi Shiwen's body. Countless martial arts information was also crazily pouring into his mind. Yao Xingyin's entire cultivation was condensed into the palm technique. This martial arts incarnation was also the incarnation of the palm technique. Although Yi Shiwen also specialized in palm techniques, over the years his main focus was on boxing techniques, saber techniques, and sword techniques. These three martial arts were no longer at the same level. Now that he swallowed Yao Xingyin's palm technique incarnation in one breath, it allowed him to climb to the peak of palm techniques and catch up in an instant. Yao Xingyin almost swallowed all the essence of a Pong realm master in martial arts. Although Yao Xingyin was arrogant in terms of strength, it was obvious to everyone that he was not inferior at all. He only felt that the power of his whole body was constantly rushing out, and he was only a moment away from a real breakthrough. The scene was silent. Everyone was stunned and didn't know what to say. Damn it, beast! Yao Xingyin kept roaring. His physical body was about to shatter. I won't let you go. I want your whole family, your whole clan, the whole world to die. Die without a burial place. You're courting death. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He took a step forward, and a wave of air filled the sky. Yao Xingyin was blasted away again. Kill me if you have the ability. You don't dare at all. Yao Xingyin said coldly. As long as I don't die today, I want you to die. Sooner or later, you will die in my hands. Killing intent flashed in Yi Shiwen's eyes, and he said, You're forcing me to kill you. He really didn't want to kill people and provoke a mortal enemy in this unknown deification abyss. You don't dare. Yao Xingyin spat out these words coldly, as if he was regaining the only dignity that he had lost. But just as his voice fell, A shocking sword light fell from the sky and directly blasted into his body. It caused his physical body that was already about to collapse to explode completely. His spirit also exploded completely, and he couldn't be more dead. I'm sorry, although I don't want to get into trouble. I hate it when people threaten me, especially when they threaten my family, Yi Shiwen said faintly. He really didn't want to kill people, but at critical moments, he never lacked decisiveness to kill. This Yao Xingyin was used to being lawless. If he said he would do it, he would not leave behind such a trace. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the craziest person didn't think that things would turn out like this. Yao Xingyin was actually killed by Yi Shiwen. This world was too crazy. Yao Xingyin was killed. For the newcomers, Yao Xingyin was just a particularly arrogant senior, and he was even a senior who came to seize their celestial source. But for the old people who had been in the deification abyss for a long time, this was almost a huge earthquake. It didn't matter if Yao Xingyin died. In the deification abyss, although there were controls, such things often happened. But he just wanted Yao Xingyin. Why didn't anyone stand up to stop him, even though they obviously didn't like him? It was because he was Yao Xingyin. Oh my God, did I see it wrong? This is crazy. This newcomer is in big trouble. Yao Xingyin is killed. I'm afraid Yao Xingqing is completely crazy now. Oh my God, I must be seeing things. How dare this newcomer? How dare he be so bold? Oh my God, the earth is going to shake. Yao Xingyin and Yao Xingqing have always had a good relationship. Now that Yao Xingyin is dead, Yao Xingqing must be crazy. Maybe he will implicate these newcomers and kill them all. After a long silence, everyone suddenly burst into discussion. Even the old people felt that it was unacceptable. Oh my God, this Yi Shiwen is so fierce. But with his character, he will definitely seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Kiki, he can be a friend. The monkey laughed and said with a strange smile. The gazes of the people around him became strange. You're really enjoying the show, and don't mind the matter getting bigger. How could Yi Shiwen not know that killing Yao Xingyin would probably cause big trouble? But he had no other choice. Yao Xingqing was able to squeeze into the top 10, and his strength was probably above Huyin Ayanu's. The current Yi Shiwen absolutely could not deal with him. Fortunately, he still had 2 years. These 2 years belonged to the protection period for the newcomers. As long as he stayed in the Taoist rite, Yao Xingqing could not do anything to him. As long as he improved further during this period, it would not be a problem for him to contend with the 9th level of Paoang realm. At least he would have the power to protect himself. He had already calculated all of this. It seemed to be reckless, but in fact, it was after careful consideration. This was already the best solution he could come up with. However, he still had a problem. How would he be judged in the deification abyss after killing someone? What kind of punishment would he face? It would definitely not be simple. Otherwise, with Yao Xingyin's unruly character, he would not be so afraid. Chapter 2160. Yao Xingyin was killed by Yi Shiwen, so his wealth naturally fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. However, Yi Shiwen was disappointed. Even he only had 2 pieces of divine source. However, it made sense when he thought about it. If he had enough resources, he wouldn't need to rob everywhere to maintain his cultivation. However, it was always a good thing to have 2 more pieces of divine source. He didn't look back, nor did he look at the people who were scared silly by him. He went straight back to the Taoist sanctum. I want to know, what's the punishment for killing Yao Xingyin? Yi Shiwen didn't hide anything and directly asked Elder Kong. In God Transformation Abyss, killing someone can be a big or small matter. You won't have to pay with your life, but it's not like there's no punishment at all. Generally speaking, you'll be thrown directly into the blood prison. If you can return from the blood prison alive, then it's fine. But if you die in there, then it's a different story. Elder Kong said lightly, as if he was talking about something unimportant. But you're a newcomer, so you have 2 years of protection period. So even if you're sent to the blood prison, it'll be 2 years later. You'll be fine for a while. Haha. To be honest, I've been here for many years, and this is the first time I've seen a newcomer's protection period used in this kind of place. Yi Shiwen was also somewhat embarrassed. although he was forced to do so, but in fact, it was really rare for a newcomer to be able to kill a person. How could an average person have such strength? Admittedly, those who came from the outside world were all geniuses, but those who could stay here were all geniuses and evildoers. Not to mention, they had been cultivating for so long, so it was normal to say that they couldn't compare with you. But after hearing Elder Kong's words, he was a little relieved. There were still 2 years left. At least he wouldn't be thrown into the blood prison unprepared. But even so, don't be too relaxed. In a place like the blood prison, there are even powerful experts, evil gods, and Pawang realm captured by our ancestors. So what if you're at the 9th level of Pawang realm? If you're not careful, you'll die in there. Under normal circumstances, the survival rate of 5 years is only 30%. And this is under normal circumstances. Yao Xingyan is dead, and Yao Xingqing won't let you go easily. At that time, you won't only have to face the powerful existences in the blood prison. According to my estimation, your survival rate is less than 10%. Elder Kong said faintly. Yi Shiwen's expression changed slightly as he listened. With his current strength, he was almost the strongest person below the mythical peak. He didn't even have a chance of survival. What kind of existence was this blood prison? Indeed, compared to other places, the punishment for murder in this god transformation abyss was not too excessive. However, what was truly terrifying was the survival rate. This was the most terrifying thing. What's wrong? Do you regret it? Elder Kong looked at Yi Shiwen with a faint smile. Yi Shiwen shook his head and said, I can't retreat now that things have come to this. I can only say that he's fated to face this tribulation. Not to mention, I never regret the things I do. A real man has an indomitable spirit. There's no need to regret. I have a clear conscience. Elder Kong nodded in satisfaction. There was a rare hint of appreciation in his eyes. Good, it's not bad to think that way. Although it's a calamity for you, it's also a great opportunity for you. Although the survival rate isn't high, if you can survive, your cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds. Among the top 10 in the 3rd region, 3 of them have fought their way out of the blood prison. As for the others, even if they haven't killed anyone, they would still go to the blood prison to temper themselves. It can be said that although it's very dangerous, if you can come back alive, then there will be a place for you in the 3rd region in the future. That's good. Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest fear on his face. He didn't have much time. If he wanted to improve to a sufficient level in a short period of time, he naturally had to pay a price. He was already prepared. I need to race against time. This is also a great training for me. God doesn't give me time, so I can only fight my way out. I have no other choice. Help me look after the training hall. I don't want to go out within 2 years. I don't want anyone to disturb me. Yi Shiwen said and went into the depths of the training hall without looking back. Don't worry, the rookie protection period of 2 years is the rule. No one can break such a rule. Even if Yao Xingqing came in person, it would be useless. Elder Kong said. Just when Yi Shiwen entered the closed-door training, the outside world had completely exploded. Whether it was the newcomers or those who were watching the show, they didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Although they were watching the show and didn't mind the matter getting bigger, they never thought that it would reach this point. Yao Xingyan's death was nothing. However, this matter involved Yao Xingqing, one of the top 10 experts. As everyone knew, Yao Xingqing and Yao Xingyan had a very good relationship. This was also the reason why everyone could tolerate Yao Xingyan. Even if they didn't want to give face to the monk, they still had to give face to the Buddha. Now that Yao Xingyan was dead, it would set off a shocking wave. As for those newcomers, although they were speechless, they couldn't say anything. Even if they might face Yao Xingqing's anger, could it be that Yi Shiwen was wrong to stand up for them? No matter how heartless they were, they wouldn't say such a thing. Sure enough, it didn't take long for this matter to spread throughout the 3rd district of the deity transformation abyss. It wasn't that Yi Shiwen and Yao Xingyan had such a great influence, but anything related to Yao Xingqing, a top 10 expert, could attract the attention of countless people in the 3rd district. Even this candidate included the other top 10 experts. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. Coupled with some people adding fuel to the fire, This matter became the hottest topic in the 3rd District overnight. And Yao Xingqing didn't let everyone down. After learning of his brother's death, although he was still in cultivation, he also issued an order to drive out Yi Shiwen and let him die without a burial place. It was just that he was still in the rookie protection period. Even with Yao Xingqing's domineering attitude, he couldn't challenge the inherent rules of the deity transformation abyss. Rules were rules, and no one could break them. So what he could do now was to keep a close eye on Yi Shiwen so that he couldn't escape. As for the protection period of 2 years, the rest was simple. Even if Yao Xingqing blew up the dojo, the people of the deity transformation abyss would not intervene. At most, they would throw him into the blood prison after the incident. The strong were king, and the weak had no place to stand. This was also the rule here. If you don't want to be bullied, quickly become strong. This was the unspoken rule of the deity transformation abyss. Although there were countless pairs of eyes outside, Yi Shiwen didn't have such awareness. Instead, he began to cultivate in seclusion. This time, his harvest was not small. Although he only obtained 2 pieces of divine source, the most important thing was that after he devoured Yao Xinyan's martial arts incarnation, his understanding of the Palm Dao had also improved by leaps and bounds. In one breath, his martial arts had made great progress. After 7 days of comprehension, he had already firmly consolidated his realm into the 9th level of Paoang realm. It was only a matter of time for him to break through this time. But even so, if he wanted to improve by leaps and bounds in a short period of time, it would be possible to do so with the help of the power of divine source. His realm was enough. It was like digging a big enough pool, but it would take time to fill it up. Normally, it would take a lot of time to accumulate, so he had to borrow the power of the source of God to allow him to instantly surpass the power that ordinary people would need to use 1,000 or even several thousand years to accumulate. He sat cross-legged in the deepest part of the mansion, and all the nomological laws around him manifested. In this deification abyss, he seemed to be able to easily sense the existence of the nomological laws. He also seemed to understand why there were so many terrifying existences in the blood prison. In this place where the laws could almost be felt with the physical body, how could there not be terrifying existences for a long time? Above his head, the divine source suddenly exploded, turning into endless energy and information of the great path, all of which were infused into his body. For others, the divine source was extremely precious, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of it when using it. He lacked time and still lacked time. Not enough time, still not enough. Not enough, not enough, he shouted. His body was like a huge sponge, crazily absorbing the power and information of the great path contained in the source of the divine source. He even felt a sense of hunger and thirst. This was the first time he had felt something like this since he was able to abstain from eating. His body rapidly absorbed the energy and information of the great path, which was the fundamental existence to promote his progress. Again, he roared, and a piece of divine source floated out, and then instantly shattered again with a bang. All of it turned into energy and information of the great path, and all of it poured into Yi Shiwen's body. He had to race against time with everyone. He couldn't rest for even a moment. And in such a crazy cultivation, time was also advancing rapidly. Month after month flew by, and he didn't feel anything at all. In the blink of an eye, more than a year had passed, and the time limit of 2 years was approaching. At this time, Yi Shiwen, who was in close cultivation, felt like his whole body was on fire, and countless flames burned directly from his body. Chapter 2161. It was the Nanming Leaf Fire. It seemed to be burning something. It was burning fiercely from his body, turning into a cloud of green smoke that was burned out of his body. The energy within his body seemed to be unable to withstand it any longer. It completely erupted and rushed out like a torrent. Boom! That incomparably powerful force spread out and helped him break through to the 7th level of the Paoang realm. I've finally arrived. He opened his eyes. In the past 2 years, he had been frantically trying to break through to the 7th level of the Paoang realm. This was much more difficult than any of his previous breakthroughs. After all, Breaking through from the 6th level to the 7th level of the Poang realm was equivalent to breaking through from the intermediate level to the advanced level of the Poang realm. In the past year or so, he had consumed a total of 10 pieces of divine source before finally breaking through to the 7th level of the Poang realm. If others knew about this, they would be shocked. Many people didn't even need 10 pieces of divine source to break through to the peak of the mythical realm. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He wasn't an ordinary 6th level of the Poang realm. Breaking through to the 7th level of the Poang realm was just a normal change. His combat power had taken a leap from the peak of the 8th level of the Poang realm to the 9th level of the Poang realm. Given his strength at the 7th level of the Poang realm, it was easy to imagine the difficulty of breaking through to the 9th level of the Poang realm. Of course, this could only be achieved by using the martial path incarnation and the 5 emperor battle robes. Even so, it was already shocking enough. If word of this were to get out, it would probably shock everyone. Even so, he wasn't satisfied. He was at most stronger than an ordinary 9th level Poang realm cultivator. He was still far from being able to contend with a top-notch powerhouse like the Divine Union leader by relying on his own strength. However, he had no choice but to come out of seclusion. Although he wanted to continue breaking through, he didn't have much time left. There were only 3 more days, and it would be 2 years at most. This meant that the 4th competition was about to begin. He hadn't participated in the previous 3 times, but this time, he had to participate. The previous 3 times were under the protection of the newcomers. It didn't matter if he didn't go or not, because he wouldn't be eliminated because of his ranking. However, it was different this time. If they didn't participate, they would be immediately eliminated. Even if they did participate, they would still be eliminated if they couldn't enter the top 1,000. The cruelest part of the deity transformation abyss, after 2 years, was finally going to bare its fangs and reveal its most brutal true face. At this time, Elder Kong, who had been guarding outside, came in, looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "What, are you ready? There are only 3 days left before the semi-annual competition begins. I have to remind you that you didn't participate in the last 3 times, and that's fine. But this time, you must participate." "I understand." Yi Shiwen nodded. He held the token in his hand, and then continued to seclusion. He wanted to use the last 3 days to consolidate his strength and completely consolidate his fighting strength in the 9th level of Poang realm. This way, he would be able to face the competition 3 days later. This was also the first time he was going to participate in a competition, so he couldn't afford to fail. Although he was confident in himself, he couldn't guarantee that he would encounter an unexpected situation and make a mistake. Not only for Yi Shiwen, but also for the newcomers living in the surrounding area. This was also a crucial competition. In the previous 3 competitions, some people had participated, some had not participated, and some had only participated in 1 or 2 of the 3 competitions. But it didn't matter because it wouldn't cause them to be kicked out. But this time, if they couldn't break into the top 1,000, then the result waiting for them would inevitably be that they would be kicked out. They had already entered the virtual world. This was a huge world, just like the real world. Many people couldn't even tell the difference between the virtual world and the real world. They also didn't know what kind of great existence could create such a virtual world. Everything about them was also just like the real world. The newcomers gathered together in groups of 3 to 5. 2 years was enough for them to have a certain degree of familiarity with each other, and also formed small groups of various sizes. Their relationship was much closer than 2 years ago. 2 years had made them completely understand that the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad's previous words about being united to protect themselves were definitely not just a lie, but something that they really needed to do. If they did not unite, then it was very likely that they would be devoured by the older generation, and not even their bones would be left. When an individual's strength couldn't guarantee their survival, the only choice left was to unite and protect themselves. As newcomers who came in with the same batch, they had no other choice but to protect themselves. This time, I don't know how many people will be able to stay in the end. Many people muttered in their hearts. Compared to 2 years ago, their strength was more than just a little stronger, and many people even had a breakthrough in the realm. Compared to 2 years ago, it could be said that there was a great transformation. However, in the past 2 years, most of them had participated in the competition more or less, and they truly knew the gap between them and these old people. They knew how big the gap was between them and these old people. Not to mention the experts whose realm was far above theirs. Even experts of the same realm could easily defeat them, and they almost had no power to fight back. Although there had been some changes in the past 2 years, it was still very rare to be able to survive. Everyone was extremely worried that if they couldn't survive today, then their fate would be worrisome. In other words, even if they could survive, so what? What was the use? The next competition would be half a year later. At this time, they truly understood what it meant to only choose monsters. It was impossible for ordinary people to survive here. This was a place where only monsters lived. But at least Sun Qingtian and the others could still survive. The 3 of them, in just 2 years, participated 3 times, and each time, they made great progress. In the first time, the 3 of them entered the top 1,000 together. Yes, their progress was even faster. Yes, they improved even faster after that. In the second round, they had already made it into the top 500. In the previous round, they had already entered the top 300. However, it would be extremely difficult for them to improve further. The 8th layer of the Palong stage is their limit. Now, their strength is probably comparable to Yao Xingyan's from 2 years ago. Indeed, not a single one of them is a simple character. This time, probably only the 3 of them can stay in the competition. The others are somewhat unlucky. Even if they break into the 8th heaven of Palong realm, they can't say for sure that they won't fail miserably. Someone sighed and said, those who could enter the top 1,000 were, without exception, at the peak of the 7th heaven of Palong realm. However, those who could squeeze into the top 1,000 with the identity of the 7th heaven of Palong realm were all extremely strong people. They were basically invincible in the same realm, and they also needed good luck. If they encountered a stronger opponent, they could be directly eliminated. Even the experts of the 8th heaven of Palong realm could fail miserably. Unless they stepped into the peak of the 8th heaven of Palong realm, it was possible to enter the top 1,000 steadily and not be eliminated. Naturally, everyone was extremely worried. Among them, not even 30% could enter the 8th heaven of Palong realm, and there were only a few who were already at the peak of the 8th heaven of Palong realm. Even so, many people called it the strongest in so many years. In the past, it was already not bad to have a few people break into the 8th heaven of Palong realm. This was the gap. But even so, it was useless. Those who should be eliminated would still be eliminated, and even if they were unlucky, they could be eliminated. Here, geniuses were the least valuable. There were also people who were unwilling to give up and went to find Elder Kong. They were geniuses, and as long as they had enough time, it was more than enough to catch up with those people. However, Elder Kong just said contemptuously, geniuses? Who isn't? You are just eliminated products. Even if you catch up, who knows to what extent the others have already improved. You are not at the same level at all? Those who could stabilize in the top 1,000 all year round were all geniuses. Even if there were a few fish that slipped through the net, it was not a big deal at all. In this place, the most worthless thing was geniuses. Although it was not to say that geniuses were like grass, but in fact there was not much difference. No, there is actually another person. Did you forget? Someone suddenly said. Everyone was silent all of a sudden. They also knew that the person they were talking about was Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen had vanished from the face of the earth in the past 2 years. He hadn't appeared even once. At first, everyone was expecting him to display his invincible might. However, it was a pity that he hadn't appeared even once. This had disappointed everyone. Yi Shiwen, in the crowd, the blue-eyed golden toad clenched his fists. When Yi Shiwen was mentioned, it reminded him of the almost humiliating failure 2 years ago. There was no reason to say that it was a humiliating failure. It was because everyone knew this, so they rarely mentioned Yi Shiwen's name, for fear of provoking him. Although I don't know to what extent he has improved in the past 2 years, even if there is no progress, I am afraid that with his strength 2 years ago, I am afraid that he is capable of breaking into the top 200. Someone said. This statement was recognized by everyone. Even a proud person like them wouldn't casually slander such a powerhouse. Yi Shiwen's strength seemed to have exceeded their level. In fact, they didn't even have the qualifications to look up to him. Chapter 2162. Although they did not want to admit it, they had to admit that they could not catch up to Yi Shiwen's level 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he was already strong enough to beat up Yao Xingyan. So, how strong would he be 2 years later? Could he have entered the 9th level of the Paoang realm? Someone guessed boldly. I don't think so. How could he be so fast? Yi Shiwen was only a few years old, but he already had the strength to defeat the 8th level of the Paoang realm. If he advanced further, how powerful would he be? Moreover, it was impossible to be so fast. Although it was only one level, everyone knew that this one level was a world of difference. It directly separated the upper and middle levels of the 3rd division. Stepping into the 9th heaven of Paoang realm meant that one would be able to step into the upper levels of the 3rd division. One should know that the top 100 people in the 3rd division were all at the 9th heaven of Paoang realm. If news of this spread, it would be enough to shock many worlds. Even in the mysterious world, the Divine Union, apart from the leader of the Divine Union, only Dai Jibai was at the 9th level of the Paoang realm. In the God Transformation Abyss, there were hundreds of people at the 9th level of the Paoang realm in the 3rd district alone, and this was after eliminating many unqualified people. Many people who reached a certain age were all eliminated. It was that simple. One could imagine how difficult it was to reach the 9th heaven of Paoang realm. What's more, he was still at the 6th heaven of Paoang realm. To reach the 9th heaven of Paoang realm in terms of combat power, the difficulty would be more than 10 times more difficult than breaking through from the 8th heaven to the 9th heaven of Paoang realm. However, when everyone thought about it again, they realized that nothing was impossible for Yi Shiwen. Perhaps when everyone thought that it was impossible, he had done it. After the initial shock, everyone secretly began to compare in their hearts. The road to proving the Tao was long and arduous. It was too early to say who would win and who would lose now that it had not been completed yet. The one who had the last laugh would be the one who had the best laugh. Suddenly, just as everyone was discussing, a figure slowly appeared in the void realm. Everyone fixed their eyes on it. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? After 2 years, Yi Shiwen's aura had become even more restrained. He looked even more enigmatic. It's Yi Shiwen. It's really Yi Shiwen. That's right, it really is him. After not seeing him for a few years, he seems to have become even stronger. I can't even see through him now. At this time, Yi Shiwen gave everyone the feeling that he was like an unfathomable sea. If they could see some of it before, then they couldn't see it at all now. In the end, they couldn't see how unfathomable he was. However, even in the past, they had never clearly seen Yi Shiwen's true level. Yi Shiwen glanced around and realized that he had not seen each other for 2 years. Monkey was the only person he was familiar with among these people. However, Monkey had already walked over before he could walk over. You've finally come out of seclusion. I heard that you've been in seclusion for the past 2 years. Now that you've come out, you must have gained a lot. Let's find a chance to spar. Monkey rubbed his hands and grinned. All right, Yi Shiwen said, but it seems that you have to wait for me to come back from the blood prison. Monkey's face stiffened slightly, but he was not surprised. After the incident with Yi Shiwen, how could they not understand the restrictions of killing others? In particular, the survival rate of the blood prison was even more shocking. It seemed that the survival rate was actually not too low, at least 30%. However, in reality, those who were thrown into the blood prison were all top geniuses. These people only had less than 30% survival rate. If it were an ordinary person, they would basically die after entering. The blood prison is quite interesting. I'll go in and play when the time comes. Monkey restrained his smile and said, I can't lose to you by too much. I can't beat you now, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to beat you in the future. As a top genius of the three-eyed heavenly monkey race, he was confident that he wouldn't lose to anyone. In fact, he was right. In just 2 years, he had already made it to the middle ranks. At this rate, it wouldn't take more than a few years for him to make it to the top 100. Although it seemed that the top 100 was not as good as the top 10, it was already very rare. After all, those who were defeated by them, Even those who were eliminated from the top 1,000 were all overlords of their respective worlds. They had defeated countless enemies in order to be able to do so. Therefore, every time they eliminated someone, it was like eliminating hundreds of millions or even billions of creatures that were defeated by them at the same time. Such a terrifying elimination rate meant that even the top 100 would have an extraordinary status. However, it was obvious that Monkey definitely wouldn't set his goal only on the top 100. Haha, then I'll be waiting for you when the time comes, Yi Shiwen said with a forthright smile. Although he didn't speak much with Monkey, he really liked him and got along well with him. But you have to be careful. I heard that Yao Xingqing has already sent people to the blood prison to intercept you. He might even take action personally. Monkey reminded. The blood prison was too big and too chaotic. The death rate was as high as 70%, which made it a bloody hell. It was normal for people to die in there. If he really wanted to do something, the blood prison would be very suitable. Don't worry. Yi Shiwen heard it, but he didn't take it to heart. What kind of place was the blood prison? Yao Xingqing couldn't even take care of himself after entering here. How would he have the time to look for trouble with Yi Shiwen? Even if Yao Xingqing really wanted to look for trouble with Yi Shiwen, he would have to wait until Yi Shiwen could find him. Yi Shiwen, just when they were about to speak, the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad walked up, then stared at Yi Shiwen and said, "Last time, I was ranked 268th. You can only be stronger than me, not weaker than me. You have to be careful. Don't be eliminated before this. Otherwise, I can't convince myself that I lost to you." Yi Shiwen looked at the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad for a while, then suddenly smiled and said, "This time, I will let you see my strength. A mere 268th rank can't stop me at all." He found that the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad had become a lot calmer after 2 years of accumulation. It was undoubtedly much steadier than the arrogance when they first met. Perhaps it was because it had seen too many noobs and understood that Yi Shiwen was nothing at all. Perhaps it was because Yi Shiwen had beaten it badly before. In short, it was undergoing an amazing transformation. The arrogance of its whole body had also been restrained a lot. This gave Yi Shiwen a feeling of wanting to see it. This blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad, as long as he could restrain his arrogance with his talent, it would not be difficult for him to stand out, even in this deity transformation abyss where experts were as numerous as clouds. After a few years, it might even have hope of being in the top 10. Arrogant. After the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad threw this sentence coldly, it turned and left. "I hope you could do what you said." Yi Shiwen smiled faintly and did not say anything. Yi Shiwen, this time, let me see what level you have reached. In the God Transformation Abyss, there are countless geniuses. There will always be someone who can stop you. I will always be able to see your strength. The blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad said rather unwillingly. It could not see Yi Shiwen's strength now. If they really fought, it was not confident that it could force Yi Shiwen to use all of his strength. Now it was very clear that it was probably not Yi Shiwen's opponent. Its only purpose was to force out Yi Shiwen's true strength. In any case, it had to have a goal to chase. 2 years. Let me see what kind of progress you have made in these 2 years. At this time, the blue-eyed, golden-eyed toad was far from the only one who was paying attention to Yi Shiwen's strength. Others were also paying attention to Yi Shiwen's strength, but not so openly. Everyone wanted to know how much progress he had made in these 2 years. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly descended from the sky. A group of about 20 or 30 people appeared. As soon as they arrived, they seemed to cover the sky. That huge momentum even made the air stagnate. These people did not have the slightest intention of giving up on restraining the momentum of their bodies. The leader was a bald man wearing a loose robe. His face was full of scars. It was unknown how many times he had been cut to form these scars. He looked somewhat ferocious and terrifying. Scarface Vincent. Monkey spat out these 4 words with an ominous glint in his eyes. Even his fangs were showing. Yi Shiwen only needed to look at Monkey's appearance to know that he must have suffered a big loss in the hands of this bald man. He looked over. Sure enough, this bald man was indeed extraordinary. The people behind him, without exception, were all existences above the 8th level of Powong realm. Nearly half of them were at the peak of the 8th level of Powong realm. But this bald man was even stronger. He actually directly entered the 9th level of Powong realm. Although it was obvious that he had entered the 9th level of Powong realm not long ago, this realm alone was enough to firmly suppress everyone present. No wonder even Monkey suffered a loss in his hands. Sun Qingtian, TSK. Compared to half a year ago, you don't seem to have made much progress. But it's a pity that I have already entered the 9th level of Powong realm. I can even make it to the top 100. What should I do? The gap between us is getting bigger and bigger. The bald man looked at Monkey with a smile. The scars on his face trembled along with his muscles, looking even more ferocious and terrifying. This time, you better pray that you don't meet me. Otherwise, I will still beat you up on the spot. Three-eyed heavenly monkey? I don't think so. What do you mean by seeing yin and yang, connecting heaven and earth? It's all just a rumor. However, I'm not here to look for you this time. I'm here to look for one of you called Yishuan, right? Chapter 2163. However, this time, I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for someone named Yishuan among you. The bald man's gaze swept directly to everyone. Soon, he found the person he was looking for from everyone's gaze. Everyone looked at Yishuan. Naturally, they knew who he was looking for. Yishuan? The bald man tilted his neck, and then his expression was a bit unfriendly. He grinned and said, "You're the one who killed Yao Xingyan, right? Well done, but he was originally my target. I suffered a big loss in his hands. Now, I'm about to take revenge, but you're one step ahead of me. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me for my loss?" Compensate for your loss? Yishuan couldn't help but laugh. The bald man spoke as if he had caused a huge loss to him. Are you kidding me? The bald man sneered and said, "Look at me. Do I look like I'm kidding? Do you know how long I've wanted to beat him up? It's been 30 years, and now I finally have this opportunity. I stepped into the 9th level of Powong realm faster than him, but he died in your hands. Do you know how I felt when I heard the news? It's none of my business." Yishuan spat out these words coldly. He didn't take the bald man's words to heart at all. Good. You're bold enough. No wonder you dared to kill Yao Xingyan. The bald man laughed and said, "But since you don't know how to appreciate favors, then don't blame me. Now that your bounty is quite high, there are more than 1 or 2 people who want to kill you. After killing you, I can also get enough compensation from Yao Xingqing. This is a good deal." Yishuan tilted his head and looked at him and said, "Want to kill me? Let's see if you have this ability. Many people have threatened me in the past, but they have been dead for a long time now. I think you're no exception." Ha ha ha, you're really arrogant. I've met someone who's even more arrogant than me. The bald man's eyes flashed with killing intent. How dare you threaten me? You're just a newcomer. I want to see how capable you are. Now, before the competition starts, let me test your strength. He opened his mouth and spat out a long saber. He held the long saber in his hand and stared at Yishuan fiercely. You want to compete with me? You're still far from it. This saber of mine was left behind by the ancient wind god. It's invincible and can cut through the sky. He brandished the long saber in his hand, and the air instantly froze. He controlled all the power of the wind attribute, and with a single slash, even gods and demons would have to flee. Eat my blade first. Let me see how strong you are. He let out a loud roar and slashed out with an earth-shattering slash. The air surged and boiled, cutting the sky into pieces. It was a direct display of his terrifying strength. When Monkey saw the saber, his expression immediately turned serious. Compared to half a year ago, the Baldy's strength was not just a little bit stronger. It was as if a fundamental transformation had taken place. Boom! The long saber fiercely slashed into the ground and tore a terrifying crack that was tens of kilometers long. Yishuan stood motionless, and the saber slashed directly beside him. The strong astral wind directly blew against his clothes and made a flapping sound. The slash missed. Everyone was a little stunned. Could it be that the slash missed and actually slashed directly beside Yi Shiwen? They were a little dumbfounded. As a legendary master, how could this baldy make such a childish mistake? Especially those who came with the baldy, they were a little dumbfounded at this time. Could it be that they all saw wrongly? You dodged quite fast. The baldy smiled coldly. The scar on his face twisted together, looking even more ferocious. At this time, everyone understood that it was not the bald man's slash that missed, but Yi Shiwen had dodged it. It was just that his speed was so fast that everyone had an illusion, thinking that he did not dodge, and that the Bladiki had directly slashed past his body. In fact, it did not miss, and the place where the Bladiki had passed was exactly where Yi Shiwen was standing just now. How can it be so fast? That saber contains endless wind, attribute loss. It can almost be said that it has completely grasped the word fast, but he actually dodged it unscathed. Moreover, it looks so simple and effortless. Everyone had an illusion. However, they were more shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength. It was 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times more difficult to evade the attack. However, Yi Shiwen had done it. This was something that no one else could do. The power of the wind attribute itself was a kind of power that was extremely fast. This showed that Yi Shiwen's movement technique was probably extraordinary. Monkey did not speak. Just now he vaguely saw a little shadow, but it was just a flash. Even he did not have time to react. Everything happened too fast. You are nothing. It turns out that this is all you have? Yi Shiwen said. Saber techniques should not be used like this. The baldy's expression suddenly changed, and he looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. You dare to lecture me? So what? You want to put on airs in front of me? You're still far from it. If this was in reality, you would have died 1,000 times. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. Ha ha, this is really funny. I want to see how I will die 1,000 times. The baldy shouted, and the long saber in his hand once again clanged. There was a sonorous sound, and in an instant 1,000-foot saber light directly slashed from his hand. It split the sky and suddenly fell towards Yi Shiwen. It was a bit faster than before. All the saber light was almost forced into a thin line. It was already so fast that it could not be seen by the naked eye. In an instant, it had already slashed directly towards Yi Shiwen's head. Look carefully. Apart from here, it is impossible for you to know how you will die, Yi Shiwen shouted, and in an instant, he directly grabbed the saber light that had been forced into a thin line. Bang! There was a loud noise, and the thin line directly manifested into a monstrous saber light. It turned out that it was caught by someone. Yi Shiwen caught this monstrous saber light without any difficulty. This saber light that was said to be able to destroy the world kept struggling in Yi Shiwen's hand, but it was useless. Boom! This saber light was directly crushed by Yi Shiwen's bare hands. Like broken glass, it shattered into countless fragments and disappeared into the sky. Look carefully, didn't you say that you were fast? Let's see if you can take my punch. Yi Shiwen's voice just fell, and his figure had already appeared in front of the baldy. The bald man's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His speed was too fast. In the next second, he had pounced on him. It was as if he had torn the space apart. However, he didn't have the spatial fluctuations that could tear the void apart. No, he was even faster than tearing the space apart and teleporting. Bang! He didn't know when Yi Shiwen's fist had already blasted into his body. When the terrible power raged in his body, he finally realized that he had been blasted by Yi Shiwen. How is this possible? He only had time to shout this sentence, and his whole body instantly exploded in the air. He didn't have time to react at all, and the entire void was blasted into a big hole. One move, only one move, and it was in the aspect of speed that the baldy was best at. Yi Shiwen had defeated him without any suspense. Even if one was picky and unwilling to admit it at this time, it was difficult for him to say anything because he really had no face to say anything. Huff, huff, huff. The baldy's figure appeared in the space again, and he was constantly panting, as if he was still in a state of shock. At that moment, he was actually blown up by Yi Shiwen. He was right. If it was in reality, he would probably be dead. His eyes were full of surprise and doubt. Perhaps he never dreamed that he would be forced into a corner by Yi Shiwen. Then he finally reacted. This is your first time participating in the competition, and it will also be your last. Work hard. As long as you don't get eliminated, you will definitely meet me. At that time, I will let you know how terrifying the consequences of angering me are. Yi Shiwen's eyes were bloodshot. I will definitely kill you. I will kill you. This time, you should be thankful for your good luck. At least here, you won't die. But in the blood prison, you won't be able to live for long. This is your first time participating in the competition, and it will also be your last. He had underestimated Yi Shiwen too much just now. He never expected Yi Shiwen's speed to be so fast. He didn't even have the chance to display his strength, and was blown up on the spot. He was a little frightened in his heart. If it was in reality, wouldn't he be killed before he could react? In the face of this murderer who killed him, there was only endless resentment left in his heart. He couldn't wait to kill Yi Shiwen to vent the hatred in his heart. Wait until you have the ability to meet me. Yi Shiwen looked at him indifferently. He didn't care at all. Perhaps the Baldy hadn't displayed his true strength. But wasn't Yi Shiwen the same? Good. You have guts. Let's go. There will be plenty of opportunities to entertain you in the blood prison in the future. The Baldy only felt that the people around him were looking at him with ridicule. He didn't want to stay for a moment longer, so he quickly turned around and left. Well done. This guy is arrogant and despotic. I have long wanted to deal with him. If it weren't for the fact that I'm not strong enough now, I would have already killed him. Monkey stepped forward and said with a smile, however, he is not a person who will give up easily. I'm afraid he will really sneak into the blood prison at that time. That's great. I'll kill him in reality. I want to see if he can be resurrected. Chapter 2164. I haven't seen him for 2 years, and he's even more arrogant. Blue-eyed Golden Toad couldn't help but mutter to himself. Everyone didn't know what to say. It could be said that Yi Shiwen was arrogant, but he had just defeated a master of the Palong 9th layer in one move. It could be said that he was not arrogant, but his words were indeed a bit arrogant. They hadn't seen him for 2 years, and his strength seemed to have increased to the extreme. An expert at the 9th level of the Palong realm was killed. Although it was a surprise attack, he had done it. Compared to 2 years ago, his strength was much stronger. Some people originally thought that he might not have made any progress in the past 2 years. Now that they thought about it, it was ridiculous. He was already so strong 2 years ago. How could he not have made any progress now? However, everyone had to admit that it was possible for him to do it in reality. Although his enemies were not easy to deal with, and 2 of them were top 10 experts, he was not someone to be trifled with. If someone wanted to bully him, they had to see if they had the strength to do so. Many people had a feeling in their hearts that they might also have to go to the blood prison. As long as they could stay, they would definitely go to the blood prison. Otherwise, the gap between them and Yi Shiwen would only get bigger and bigger. Dang. Loud bell sounds tore through the sky, reverberating throughout the entire ethereal extent. The tokens on everyone's bodies emitted rays of light, forming a door of light in front of them. The rookies who had participated a few times weren't unfamiliar with this. Behind the door of light was everyone's opponent. In other words, they would be directly transported to the arena of the competition. After all, the entire virtual realm was very large, and the people who appeared in the virtual realm were scattered according to the area where they lived. It would take a long time for them to arrive. Although Yi Shiwen had not participated in it, he was not unfamiliar with it. He had asked Elder Kong about it before. He took a deep breath, and his eyes were deep. This was the last competition before he went to the blood prison. He also wanted to test himself. After 2 years, he wanted to see what level he had reached and what position he could rank in the 3rd division. He directly stepped into the light gate and appeared on a small island with an area of more than 1,000 meters. This small island would be the venue for his battle. He had obviously arrived first. His opponent hadn't arrived yet. While he was still observing, his opponent had already arrived. A figure broke through the void and entered. It was a young man who looked no different from a human. His face was like jade, and he was extraordinarily handsome. However, his fists were a little different. They were in a crystalline state, sparkling and translucent. At a glance, one could tell that they were extraordinary. The man glanced at Yi Shiwen and frowned. He then said, "You're not my opponent. Surrender. Otherwise, I'll beat you up. Then, you won't even have a place to cry." How flamboyant! Yi Shiwen didn't even have a chance to speak. He had asked him to surrender as soon as he came up. His imposing manner was so overbearing that he didn't give Yi Shiwen any opportunity to speak. Yi Shiwen looked over and saw that this young man indeed had the confidence to speak. His cultivation was already at the peak of the 8th level of Paoang realm. Compared to the blue-eyed golden toad and the others, he was not the slightest bit inferior. Yi Shiwen estimated that with such a cultivation, he could easily enter the top 300. With such a cultivation, he would basically not encounter any strong opponents in the first few rounds. In order to avoid bad luck and being eliminated by an opponent who was too strong, the competition here was not decided in one round. Instead, everyone had to compete. After 10 rounds, according to each person's record, winning time, winning opponents, etc., the final ranking would be determined. The top 100 would be the seeded contestants. They would not appear at the beginning, but would only appear after the contestants had competed for more than 7 rounds. Their previous 7 rounds were calculated based on full marks. Although this was unfair to the people behind, there was no such thing as 100% fairness in this world. As the top 100 contestants appeared in advance, whether they were eliminated or others were eliminated, it was the greatest injustice. Your strength is not bad. It's a pity that you're going to be eliminated here. Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said. There was no sign of surrender in advance. What did you say? The young man raised his sword-like eyebrows, and his tone suddenly became serious. He looked at Yi Shiwen with a rather unfriendly gaze. You're just a little Paoang Realm 7th level. You're still a newcomer this time. It's already not bad for a newcomer to have the cultivation of Paoang Realm 7th level. Even if you lose to me, you may still have a chance later. If you obediently retreat, you can still save a trace of face. But now you have no chance because you have completely angered me. While speaking, he instantly attacked and then stepped out, his fingertips directly pointed out an amazing sword aura. The mighty sword aura directly broke the void, cutting the sky into 2 halves. Yi Shiwen was secretly surprised. In this god transformation abyss, there were indeed countless evildoers. This young man's cultivation, compared to Yao Xingyan 2 years ago, was not the slightest bit worse. He was already at the peak of Paoang Realm 8th level, just a little bit more to break into Paoang Realm 9th level. Once he succeeded, he would be at the same level as the bald old man. Such a person, if placed in the outside world, would probably be invincible in the world. But here, it was only the first match of the competition, and he already met such a person. However, he was only a little surprised. He stepped out again, and his clothes fluttered wildly. The sword aura directly rushed over and blasted into his body, but there was no ripple at all, and it was directly swallowed by the divinity on the surface of his body. What? How is this possible? The young man was suddenly shocked. He never thought that the sword that he was very confident in could not even hurt him. This was even more terrifying than being easily taken down by him. He could not even hurt him. How could he play? What a lunatic! Just what was his physical body made of? And at this moment, Yi Shiwen made his move and shouted, "Watch carefully." He directly raised his hand and blasted out with his sword. The sword aura condensed into a terrifying long river of swordsmanship, mighty and mighty, falling from the sky, and suddenly blasted down. Boom! The terrifying sword aura rushed into his chest, and the young man was blasted out on the spot. His whole body suddenly exploded into a mist of blood. With just one move, a master at the 8th level of Paoang Realm was blasted to death by him. There was no difference. If 2 years ago, he needed to use martial arts incarnation to deal with a master of this level, then now, he could almost be said to be able to kill him completely without any effort. Looking at the battle between him and Yao Xingyan 2 years ago, and looking at the current situation, he could almost be said to be able to defeat this young man with similar strength as Yao Xingyan easily. It could be seen that his progress in the past few years was probably far beyond everyone's imagination. After easily ending the first round of battle, Yi Shiwen directly walked out of the arena. At this time, there was only Yi Shiwen in the arena, and at this time, there was no one coming out. He was a little surprised and turned out to be the blue-eyed golden toad, who came out earlier than the monkey. Blue-eyed golden toad saw Yi Shiwen and was a little surprised. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so fast. Presumably, he had also encountered some weak trash. But thinking about it, with Yi Shiwen's strength, under the circumstances that the top 100 seeded players did not appear, it was unlikely that he would encounter any trouble in the first few rounds. But this time, it also won easily, so it did not say much. After it, the monkey and the young man with the sword also came out, and then many other newcomers came out one after another. However, some of them had a happy look on their faces, while others looked very lonely. Obviously, they had lost. Because it was in the void, the physical body was condensed by the rules of the void, so there was no need to worry about the problem of continuous battles. Therefore, once everyone started fighting, they would do their best. So, once they were defeated here, they could not say anything. Damn, this time I actually encountered that freak, Jun Dingtian. It's him again. I heard that he only came a few years earlier than us. But his strength is not something we can compare with. That's right, it's him. I didn't even have time to say anything. He killed me in one move. Damn it, I met such a troublesome guy in the first round. I heard that he almost made it into the top 100 last time and became a seeded player. I'm afraid he's even stronger this time. Yi Shiwen, who was originally leisurely, suddenly had a fierce look in his eyes when he heard the name Jun Dingtian. Jun Dingtian, he had been looking for him for a long time. Previously, he, young Master Ghost Fortune, and young Master Celestial Fox had joined forces to seriously injure Hua Minghan. He had not settled the score, but Jun Dingtian had disappeared. Now, with the deaths of young Master Ghost Fortune and young Master Celestial Fox, only Jun Dingtian was still alive. Heaven did not disappoint those who persevered. It seemed that Jun Dingtian was also in the deification abyss. Since he was still in the deification abyss, it was fine. Sooner or later, they would meet, and both sides would have the opportunity to fight. The newcomer who was killed by Jun Dingtian was not weak either. He had already entered the 8th level of Paong Realm, but he was still killed by Jun Dingtian. Yi Shiwen secretly felt that it was a pity. He was killed before he could even find out Jun Dingtian's strength. It was really a pity. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. He also wanted to know how much Jun Dingtian had improved after all these years. Jun Dingtian, wait for me to take your head. While waiting, the second round of the competition had already begun. Chapter 2165. Compared to the opponent in the first round, the opponent in the second round was weaker, but it was not in the form of a human but a flood dragon. It was very powerful, only a little bit away from transforming into a real dragon. This made Yi Shiwen a little strange. One must know that flood dragons were regarded as ferocious beasts in other places, and they were regarded as peerless geniuses in human form. But in a place like Deity Transformation Abyss, real dragons were nothing, let alone a mere flood dragon. This flood dragon was not simple. Let me swallow you in one bite. The flood dragon looked up to the sky and let out a long roar. There was a hint of joy on his face. They were both in the 7th heaven of Paong Realm, and he had already reached the peak of the 7th heaven of Paong Realm. It was much better than this rookie who had just entered the 7th heaven of Paong Realm. Although he did not know how such a rookie could survive at this time, but letting him win one more round would reduce the risk of being eliminated in the end. Suddenly, accompanied by a terrifying roar, this flood dragon's body suddenly crazily spewed dragon yuan in all directions. In an instant, a huge momentum had appeared, suddenly filling the entire battle space, exuding an unparalleled, awe-inspiring momentum. He was only a little bit away from transforming into a real dragon. The blood in his whole body had almost been purified, and there was no difference between him and an ordinary real dragon. At this time, he had fully possessed the mighty aura of a real dragon. The power was very great. Oomph! This flood dragon snorted coldly, and the next moment, it had already appeared behind Yi Shiwen. It directly tore the space on the spot, without any hindrance, and its speed was also amazing. Then he saw it open its bloody mouth, and countless waves came out from it, and then turned into a terrible energy frenzy, directly sweeping out, blasting towards Yi Shiwen's back. Bang! Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand, and directly smashed this mass of light into pieces. You are not my opponent. There is no harm in admitting defeat. What? You want me to surrender? In your dreams. The flood dragon roared angrily. It couldn't care less about the fact that Yi Shiwen had easily broken its attack. The only thing left in it was anger. The human in front of it simply didn't know what was good for him. A mere early stage of the 7th level of the Powong realm actually dared to challenge him. An existence at the peak of the 7th level of the Powong realm. Wasn't that putting the cart before the horse? The dragon Yuan in his entire body was trembling. Countless forces were condensing towards the center. Without any extra movements, he condensed countless martial arts insights into this monstrous force and blasted it down. That terrifying scene formed an incomparably powerful image that directly suppressed Yi Shiwen. Stubborn fool, Yi Shiwen sneered. He stretched out one hand and directly condensed a seal, which directly suppressed the energy on the spot. The endless energies seemed to have been locked. Then, the entire seal continued to expand until it locked the flood dragon within it. The dragon lock technique had locked the flood dragon in one move. Boom! Then, the entire seal was crushed. In just an instant, it was crushed on the spot. Ah! The flood dragon screamed as it was crushed to death. Yi Shiwen easily won the second round and instantly left the arena. He was the first to come out. Whether it was the 7th level of the Powong realm or the 8th level, they could not pose any threat to him. When he came out, there was still no one. After a while, the newcomers came out one after another. Some looked ugly, some were happy. There were wins and losses, but in general, there were more failures than successes. Everyone saw that Yi Shiwen had indeed appeared early again. At this time, they were already used to it. There was nothing strange about it. With Yi Shiwen's amazing strength, it would be strange if he could not easily defeat his opponent. This battle was obviously much longer than before. Obviously, there were still people still fighting. Soon, the third round began. This time, Yi Shiwen's opponent was a normal 8th level of the Powong realm. This was considered normal. However, he encountered a peak of the 8th level of the Powong realm in the first round, which was a bit unusual. It should have been his bad luck, but his opponent was easily crushed by him. It was unknown who was the unlucky one. The third round was also easily resolved with one move. Although they were all legends and the realm was similar, the difference in strength was huge. When it came to the third round, there were even more failures among the crowd. The opponents he encountered were also getting stronger. Then came the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. He easily passed all of them. However, Yi Shiwen's opponents were also getting stronger. In the 5th round, there was another 8th level of the Powong realm. He was only half a step away from entering the 9th level of the Powong realm. There were even some trump cards that could compete with the 9th level of the Powong realm. However, they were not his opponents and were easily defeated by him. In the 6th round, the opponents Yi Shiwen encountered were also getting stronger. Generally speaking, the opponents he encountered were also related to the previous record. Basically, the more times he won, the stronger the opponent he encountered. If he had won all the way up, then all the opponents he had encountered would also have won all the way up, and none of them would be weak. As for being killed by Yi Shiwen in seconds, that could only be attributed to their bad luck. They had encountered a hidden abnormality like Yi Shiwen. Compared to the previous 5 rounds, the 6th round was the battle that everyone was looking forward to. This was because in the 7th round, the seeded participants that had been hidden for a long time would all come out to fight, and their opponents would be the opponents that had won all 6 rounds. In other words, the contestants who won all the 6th round were truly qualified to compete with the seed players. They were either at the 9th level of the Powong realm or had the means to compete with the 9th level of the Powong realm, like Yi Shiwen. From the beginning of this round, it was called the seed match by busybodies. Although the other matches were still going on, It was impossible to attract the attention of the crowd. Only those who could advance to the sixth round and not be defeated could really attract everyone's attention. In the distant space, hundreds of people were paying attention to the battles below. They might not have cared about the first few rounds of battles because those people weren't qualified to be their opponents. But now, the sixth round was different. Those who were successful would become their opponents. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. They did not want to be overtaken by these challengers. And among these hundreds of people, there were 10 people who were completely different from the others. They were the strongest among these seed disciples. Each of them was a peerless master, and each of their actions implied the truth of the Great Way. And among these people, a young man stood with his arms crossed, and his eyes were cold. He was staring at one of the arenas, and it was the arena where Yi Shiwen was at. He had seen the whole battle just now. I didn't expect that he actually has some skills. No wonder Xingyan died in his hands. The young man slowly said. He and Yao Xingyan were 70% or 80% similar. He was Yao Xingyan's elder brother, and now one of the top 10 in the 3rd district, Yao Xingqing. Let's join forces and get rid of him. We will divide the fortuitous encounter equally. I just want him to die. At this moment, another figure appeared beside him. It was a young man who looked to be in his late 20s. He was dressed in a royal robe and exuded an air of nobility. His every movement exuded an air of nobility that was on par with Yao Xingqing's proud and aloof temperament. What is there to covet from him? Yao Xingqing was not moved. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, but he didn't want to become someone else's weapon. You don't know this, but my master, Tiger Head Sage, died in his hands. But at that time, I investigated him and found that he had just entered the legendary realm. How long has it been? Even the 8th sky of Paong realm was easily killed by him. This shows that he must have had some fortuitous encounter. Don't you have any interest in it? The young man in the imperial robe couldn't help but say. This person was none other than the disciple of Tiger Head Sage, Jing Tianlei. Although he was in closed-door training, he only needed to separate a wisp of his spirit to participate in this kind of competition. Basically, anyone who could participate would naturally participate. All right, we will each send people to the blood prison. We must kill this kid. I won't be at ease if I don't kill him, Yao Xingqing said indifferently. Both of them had already finalized this matter while they were talking. Both of them were in the top 10, and were only half a step away from the Dao, confirming realm. Which one of them didn't have their own pride and self-esteem? If he continues to win like this, maybe he will meet me. At that time, I will let him know what it means to live a life worse than death. Death is a reward for him, Yao Xingqing said indifferently. Can he persist until then? It's already a miracle for him to persist until now with his realm, Jing Tianlei said with a sneer. On the other side, Huinan was also paying attention to Yi Shiwen and said, he has some ability. It's not in vain that Brother Ing Tianjing thinks so highly of him. How far can he go? Do your best and show everyone your talent before going to the blood prison. Otherwise, it won't be good if you die quietly in there. He knew very well that this kind of competition seemed to be held once every 6 months. It was too frequent, and no one seemed to care about it. However, the real big shots at the top were paying attention to this matter. Yi Shiwen wouldn't die in an unknown death only if he could enter the eyes of these big shots. Yi Shiwen naturally didn't know that so many people were paying attention to him. He had already entered the arena. Yi Shiwen, I've been waiting for you for a long time. His opponent in the 6th round was actually the bald, old man. Chapter 2166. The bald man grinned as he looked at Yi Shiwen. His eyes flickered with a deep-seated hatred. He had been humiliated by Yi Shiwen in front of his younger brother. This was a great humiliation for him. He would never forget this humiliation for the rest of his life. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to reach this step. Now that you've reached this step, consider yourself lucky. However, your good luck ends here, because this time, your opponent is me. The bald man said coldly. Do you remember how I killed you with one punch? If you have any last words, say it quickly, otherwise, it will be too late to say anything later. Yi Shiwen stood still indifferently. Even in the face of the suppression of a top master of the Powang realm, he was not moved at all. You are courting death. The bald man's face suddenly became cold. I am at the 9th level of the Powang realm, the peak of the mythical realm. Who do you think you are? Previously, you just took advantage of me. This time, if you want to get away with it, then don't even think about it. He opened his mouth and spat out a treasured saber. He grabbed it in his hand, and suddenly, even the surrounding air solidified. The law of the wind attribute continued to entangle, revealing a mysterious aura. At this moment, he was almost like the reincarnation of the wind god, using his true strength. Compared to when he fought with Yi Shiwen before, he did not use his full strength at all. In other words, he was stunned by Yi Shiwen's attack. He didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be so fierce. But this time he was different. He used his full strength and didn't give Yi Shiwen any chance to exploit any loopholes. Swish! He slashed out all the law of the wind attribute, turning into a god, and directly rushed out. All of them vibrated out, killing any master of the Powang realm or the 8th level. The space between his eyebrows had already turned into a light green color, completely fusing with the wind attribute. At this moment, he was the greatest representative of the law of the wind attribute, a god walking in the world. This saber burst out with the real power to destroy the sky. Yi Shiwen, let's see how you dodge this time. His voice hadn't even faded when the blade light had already swept onto Yi Shiwen's body. It was like teleportation. Yi Shiwen was still far away from Yi Shiwen at first, but in an instant, Yi Shiwen had completely pounced on him. It descended in an instant, not giving him any chance to dodge. Clearly, it had suffered enough and learned its lesson from last time. At this moment, many people were looking at this match with contempt. Although there were hundreds of matches going on at the same time, but this match had become the one that countless people were paying the most attention to because of the existence of Yi Shiwen. Vincent's strength is not bad. I heard that he has been stuck at the peak of the 8th level of Powang for decades. If he doesn't make any more breakthroughs, he will be eliminated early. Now it seems that he still has some potential. I heard that when Vincent first entered the Powang state, he received the inheritance of a deity. Over the years, his cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds. Although he can't be compared to us, he's not bad. Maybe he will have the opportunity to be on the same level as us in the future. That's the blade technique inherited from the wind god. It is said that in the blade he obtained, there is the inheritance of a deity. Its power is infinite. No one can block such a blade. What a fast speed. He's even faster than some of us. Maybe some of us will fall at his hands. Among the top 100 experts, some people's faces changed. They were all at the bottom of the top 100 experts. If they were not careful, they might be overturned by the people behind them. Those who were ranked at the top, especially the top 10, were not worried at all. But they had to pay attention to this problem. Whether it was Yi Shiwen or Scarface Vincent, it was possible that they would be overturned. However, just when they all thought that Yi Shiwen could not block it at all, the extremely fast long blade stopped 3 inches in front of Yi Shiwen, as if it was blocked by something. Boom! The long blade seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. It set off a monstrous airwave, instantly spreading in all directions, turning into a terrifying shockwave, but it was blocked by Yi Shiwen. At this time, everyone could clearly see that a 5 elements great array had appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. It was like a huge turntable, and it was slowly rotating, blocking all the blade light that was rushing towards him. It's useless. You want to block me with just an ordinary 5 elements great formation? Don't even think about it. The bald man kept roaring. His face was cold, and a monstrous aura rose from his whole body. He increased his power, wanting to break through all of Yi Shiwen's defenses in one fell swoop. Yi Shiwen's 5 elements great formation actually had layers of broken space. Cracks appeared, as if it would be broken in the next second. The bald man's face showed a bit of a grin. Finally, he could get his revenge. And in this situation, the power of the 5 elements around Yi Shiwen's body frantically gathered towards his body, and the 5 Emperor's battle armor was instantly put on. Boom! His aura instantly became more tyrannical and suddenly went up another level, as if the most amazing transformation had occurred. Then, one of his hands suddenly stretched out as fast as lightning, causing those who had been watching to feel dizzy and nauseous to the point of wanting to vomit. Boom! At that moment, his big hand clenched into a fist and blasted out the surging mortal world. The human doctrine fist, at the most critical moment, exerted its amazing power. Yi Shiwen was like an ancient emperor who had been reborn at this time. Boom! The human doctrine fist directly blasted on the thousands of feet-long blade auras. With a scream, the blade auras shattered inch by inch, but the terrible power directly blasted on the bald man's body along with the shattered blade auras. The bald man was immediately bombarded by Yi Shiwen's attack. Although the majority of the power had been absorbed by the shattered blade light, the remaining part still instantly inflicted serious injuries on him. His entire body was sent flying upside down. He had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen in just one move. It was just one move, but the blade auras that seemed to be able to seriously injure a master at the 9th level of Paong Realm was completely broken by Yi Shiwen. The bald man directly fell to the ground, and a huge crack was blasted out. He kept groaning. The bones in his chest had been seriously injured and broken by Yi Shiwen. At this time, his face was even more abnormally ugly. You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with only this level? You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with only this level? What wind God's inheritance? It's all bullshit. You have cultivated for so many years, but you only know how to bully newcomers. In this deification abyss, you have cultivated for dozens of years, but you have lived like a dog. Unexpectedly, you are only at this level. If I were you, I would have already committed suicide in shame. The bald man was so angry that he directly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was trembling. Arrogant, insolent, you are really lawless. Among the top 100, there were constantly people who opened their mouths to reprimand. It was as if Yi Shiwen had poked their Achilles' heel, and they were in an uproar. Although Yi Shiwen was talking about the bald man, in their ears, it became a mockery of themselves. The bald man had cultivated for decades, but he had just broken into the 9th level of Paong Realm, so he was reprimanded by Yi Shiwen as trash. As for them, even if they were better than the bald man, they were also like the bald man. They had decades of cultivation, plus thousands of years of hard work before, to reach where they were today. Usually, they were not dissatisfied with their progress, because the people around them were the same. Even compared to the masters in other places, their speed should be very, very fast. There was only regret in their hearts, and nothing else. But as the saying goes, comparing people to people is infuriating, and comparing goods to goods, you have to throw them away. Their level of advancement was considered brave and fierce, but compared to Yi Shiwen, it seemed to be nothing at all. Indeed, they were like trash. Compared to Yi Shiwen, what was the difference between them and trash? Therefore, even if Yi Shiwen's words were not directed at them, they instantly took it as a reference, and their impression of Yi Shiwen immediately became extremely bad. Those who did not attract jealousy were mediocre. There was no doubt that Yi Shiwen was now a tall tree that attracted the wind. Originally, many people were very disdainful of him, not to mention now that he dared to speak so arrogantly. Roar! The bald man let out a deafening roar like an injured beast. In the void, a huge mutated beast appeared. It was a mutated beast that controlled the wind attribute. It was the incarnation of the wind attribute condensed by the bald man, and it instantly fused with his body. Almost at that moment, the bald man jumped up from the ground. Yi Shiwen Dai. An amazing blade light directly cut through the sky and instantly appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. Its speed increased by more than a little. After integrating with the martial arts incarnation, the strength of the bald man was obviously a lot more tyrannical. Yi Shiwen's complexion didn't change. The devil wings behind him spread open. His toes fiercely touched the ground, and his figure directly swept backwards. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown hundreds of miles away. He directly retreated to the edge of the arena and barely avoided this astonishing blade attack. This was the true strength of a master of Powong Realm 9th level. Haha, Yishuan, see? This is my true strength. Go to hell. The bald man's eyes flashed with madness and directly slashed down with his blade. Just SOSO. Now I will let you see my true strength, Yi Shiwen said lightly, and behind him, the martial arts incarnation directly integrated into it. Boom! 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 The aura on his body suddenly rose in circles, and it was extremely terrifying. Look, I said, you can't even block a punch. Chapter 2167. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist momentum was unparalleled. Yi Shiwen's punch destroyed everything in its path. The power of the mortal world was vast and mighty, and it directly swept out. It was a shocking sight. The sky was shattered into two halves, and it directly fell on the bald man's body. Bang! The bald man screamed on the spot and was killed directly. Yi Shiwen, who had just entered the 9th level of Powong Realm, was no match for him after he had unleashed his power. After winning 6 rounds smoothly, Yi Shiwen breathed a sigh of relief. With these 6 consecutive victories, even if Yi Shiwen did not win the next round, he would not be eliminated. After all, those who could reach this point, without exception, could be regarded as the top masters and would not be easily eliminated. So strong, this set of fist technique is that the legendary unique skill of the Azura Demon King, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. It's really amazing. As a level 7 heavens of Powong, he was able to make it this far. He is truly unprecedented and will never be able to do so. Yao Xingqing's face was ugly, his eyes fixed on Yi Shiwen. The power of the punch just now had directly soared to the peak, and even for a short time, it could even compete with the power of the ordinary 9th level of the Powong realm. Although it was still not his opponent, it was enough. If he was allowed to grow, it would inevitably become a big problem. He turned, looked at Jing Tianlei on the side, and said, "Arrange for him to die as soon as he goes in, and bring his head to see me." "No problem," Jing Tianlei said faintly. His face was not very good. The stronger Yi Shiwen was, the greater the threat to him. He absolutely did not want to see Yi Shiwen grow. As long as there was a way to kill him, he must kill him. After Yi Shiwen came out, he found that there were still not many people around. He was still the first to come out. After a long time, many people came out of the arena. When they saw Yi Shiwen, they were a little stunned. Everyone was very clear that Yi Shiwen had won 5 consecutive battles. In other words, the opponent he was going to face was also a strong master who had won 5 consecutive battles. This kind of strong master, at least, was at the peak of the 8th level of the Powong realm, or even the 9th level of the Powong realm. The difficulty could be imagined, but he actually defeated his opponents so quickly. From the looks of it, he didn't know that he had been dealt with by the other party. He could only keep feeling speechless in his heart. The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad looked at Yi Shiwen with a complicated look in its eyes. The stronger Yi Shiwen was, the smaller the hope of redressing the humiliation. Although there was not much hope now, it was better than despair. If he won this round, he would probably have to face the seeded players in the next round. If he won the 7th round, he would almost certainly be in the top 100. It was just a matter of ranking. When everyone thought of this, they couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Although they had tried to catch up countless times, they were left behind by Yi Shiwen every time. 2 years ago, he had already far surpassed everyone, and now it was even possible for him to break into the top 100 in his first attempt. With such strength, he was not considered weak in the 3rd district of the deity transformation abyss. "You won the 6th round?" Monkey walked over and asked. "Yes." Yi Shiwen didn't hide it and nodded directly. "Good. You're really good. If you go one step further, you can break Jun Dingtian's record. In the past 1,000 years, apart from you, he is the only one who broke into the 7th round on his first attempt," Monkey said with a smile. He and the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad also died in the 5th round and failed to break into the 6th round. The opponents they encountered were far stronger than them. If you can break into the 7th and 8th round, we can also hold our heads high. I don't plan to continue the 7th round, Yi Shiwen said lightly. What? Monkey opened his eyes wide and couldn't help but say in disbelief. Why don't you continue? Anyway, I have enough points. I won't be eliminated no matter what, Yi Shiwen said lightly. It was not necessary to participate in this kind of semi-annual competition. It was just that if he didn't participate once, his ranking would naturally drop by 50 places. If he participated a few more times, he would naturally fall out of the top 1,000. In that case, no matter how talented he would be kicked out. There was no other possibility. Of course, this was only the top masters had this treatment. Those who were ranked at the bottom had to participate in the competition every time. Otherwise, their ranking would continue to drop, and they would naturally fall out of the competition. They might not even need to participate in the competition. Monkey smiled a little helplessly. Speaking of which, it was true. However, people like Yi Shiwen who didn't care at all were rare. Even so, there is no need for you to give up so easily. You should know that you have already made it into the top 200. As long as you win one more match, you will naturally enter the top 100. You should know that the points obtained from the top 200 are completely different from the points obtained from the top 100, Monkey said, a puzzled look on his face. Because now, I'm afraid that Yao Shengqing and Jing Tianlei hate me to the core. They have already begun to prepare to intercept and kill me in the blood prison. How can I let them prepare? Maybe even their bodies have already gone to the blood prison. If I wait until the competition is over and then go there, won't I be caught red-handed by them? Yi Shiwen said. Since he had done so, he naturally had his own plans. Yi Shiwen had calculated that with his own strength, he would at least have no problem escaping if there was only Yao Shengqing and Jing Tianlei. However, he was afraid that both of them would join hands. Therefore, he had to leave as soon as possible. It would be too late if he were to participate in the competition. As for the competition, he didn't care much about it. It was fine as long as he didn't fall last and get kicked out. The next time he appeared again, his goal would be to win the championship. He would break all the shackles, defeat everyone in one go, and win the championship. His strength was still somewhat lacking compared to Yao Shengqing and Jing Tianlei. However, as long as he condensed the blade incarnation again, everything would be different. His strength would be improved again. At that time, it would be enough to sweep away everything. There was no need to be anxious at all. A little impatience would spoil a great plan. See you in 5 years. Yi Shiwen glanced at Monkey and slowly disappeared into the void. What? Yi Shiwen forfeited. Yao Shengqing had just defeated his opponent in the first round. It was a master of Paoang Realm 9th level. However, he was not Yao Shengqing's opponent at all. He was defeated in one move. However, Yao Shengqing had just defeated his opponent and came back to no such news. Yi Shiwen actually forfeited. Countless wisdom flashed in his eyes. He had figured out all of Yi Shiwen's plans in an instant. He had guessed what Yi Shiwen wanted to do. Damn, he actually escaped. He must have predicted that we have an ambush, so he rushed to the blood prison first. He actually caught us off guard. Jing Tianlei also came out soon. After hearing the situation, he immediately knew Yi Shiwen's plan. These two people were peerless talents themselves. How could Yi Shiwen's plan be hidden from them? No, Yi Shiwen did not intend to hide from them at all. It was nothing more than a time difference when they were caught off guard. Once he escapes into the blood prison is so big. Finding him is like finding a needle in a haystack. It is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Yao Shengqing's eyes flickered. The blood prison was too big. Once Yi Shiwen escaped into it, it was equivalent to a fish in the sea. It was impossible to find him. Now, there is no time to lose. We must rush to the blood prison immediately. We can't let him escape, said Jing Tianlei. Forfeit. We must also forfeit. We can't let him escape. Otherwise, it will not be so easy to find him again. In order to hunt down Yi Shiwen, the two quickly decided to forfeit. Otherwise, it would be impossible to catch Yi Shiwen. Soon, many people saw a strange scene. Yao Shengqing and Jing Tianlei, the two peerless masters who could enter the top 10, actually forfeited. Many masters who were close to them also forfeited at the same time. Almost all of a sudden, more than 100 people were eliminated. Many people were talking about it out of thin air. They were extremely excited. Soon, they knew why they forfeited. It was because Yi Shiwen also forfeited. They actually went to hunt down Yi Shiwen. All of a sudden, many people who were not very clear about Yi Shiwen remembered such a name. Although this person was only at the 7th level of Paoang realm, he could make the two peerless masters, Jing Tianlei and Yao Xingqin, give up the competition to hunt down Yi Shiwen. What ability did he have? Even the two peerless masters were afraid of him escaping. Because of the collective forfeiture of these masters, for a time, there was a lot of chaos in the arena. Because such a situation had never happened before. The blood prison was a boundless blood red. The scarlet color looked a little strange and a little scary. Endless roars of fierce beasts sounded one after another. Yi Shiwen stood at the entrance of the blood prison. The formation slowly opened. This blood prison suppressed countless tyrannical and evil existences, so it needed to be sealed with a special formation. This is... Yi Shiwen's face showed a shocked expression. The blood aura that rushed towards him gave him a familiar feeling. This is clearly the blood world in the ancient desolation. He immediately felt that this blood prison clearly had the same origin as the blood world. He could not be wrong. He had the heart of the blood world. He was very clear about the nature of the blood world. How could he not feel it? It was just that the blood world was undoubtedly much lower level compared to the blood prison. It could not be compared to the blood prison. The blood prison was a very high-level world. All kinds of laws were perfect. It was very amazing. It was just that it was sealed under the center of the deity transformation abyss. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.